And we are live. It looks like Comrade Net might be coming on pretty soon. I left the StreamYard link in the comment. Not everyone will be able to get in, but some people will. I do want to have different perspectives. And here's Net. Some people. Hey, I do want to have different perspectives. Okay. Here's Net.
Cool.
Hey.
I'm here.
Yeah, you are. You are. And welcome, everyone. So I just want to start this one off with saying welcome, solidarity. For those watching later, if you like this, you can like, comment, and subscribe, blah, 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 that good call to action stuff that actually works, apparently, statistically. But today I want to talk about a phenomenon that is, who else just came on? Sorry, Eli. Maybe another time. But
people should check out Eli's channel. Actually, he can be insightful.
I know Eli. Eli usually comments every once in a while on my stuff and chimes in on live streams and stuff. Eli is a very nice person. So what I want to say is that, this sort of statement I want to come out with is that there's a phenomena amongst not just communists, but all Westerners. But I'm speaking about mostly revolutionaries, people who are class conscious and understand the difference in the world and who we hold to a higher standard. Now, there's a phenomenon amongst these people, and I think it's innate in all of us due to a couple of factors. And it is that many of us, and I am not absolved of this. I'm also guilty of this, just as everyone else. At least when it comes to settlers and white Euro, or not necessarily white, but the European sort of mindset. That there's a part of us that dehumanizes the people of the third world and dehumanizes them, and before we can really explain like where it comes from and why we dehumanize them, like we need to sort of show how it manifests itself. And I think a lot of us would be very aware how it manifests itself, like overtly, from people who are overtly, like Western chauvinists and racists, and think that people from the global South, are not as equal as them. There's people like that. But I think even the most pure-hearted people, the most dedicated, class-conscious, intelligent revolutionaries from the West, we have this innate thing of dehumanizing not only the people of the third world, but their history too, turning it into sort of this mechanical or on the other side, romantic or Orientalist fetishization of what it actually is. So you're stuck in between. And what this does is it takes away in the discourse of what you're talking about, the agency of these people, right? When you speak about, the Chinese government is state capitalist and it's evil, doing all this imperialist stuff. And what they're doing, because it's a people's republic, a new democratic republic, this is undeniable, that we're not talking about economics now. You're basically shifting the blame to the Chinese masses, saying, you don't know what you're doing, to these 1.4 billion people. You don't know what you're doing. You're stupid. Actually, us, who have never even been to where you are in the world or understand your people, we know better. And you're wrong. And that's what they're saying. And the same can be said for African socialism, right? So you look at, or even Palestinian liberation, or the Yemen, or the Yemenis fighting against imperialist invasion, right? We have like I just don't know where people find the hubris, or Iran, to tell Iran, oh, you're so reactionary for living under a theocracy. Are you fucking kidding me? You don't understand how these people think. This was a popular revolution. Like, do people not understand that the Islamic Revolution in Iran was popular? and backed by the masses, like just because it doesn't look good from your Western values and your Western perspective doesn't mean these people are just as human and have just as much of the ability to see what's going on as you, if not a better ability. So not only are you dehumanizing these people, but you're also saying that, well, they're stupid. They have no agency of their own. They're just directed by their puppet masters at the top. And we can all say that that sort of thinking is bad, especially since the puppet master thing sort of always comes back to us Jews. Anything you have to say? Viva Castillo, Viva Castillo, Viva Castillo. I like it. What are my thoughts on Pedro Castillo and Peru Libre? That's a good question. I think Pedro Castillo is amazing. I think that what he's doing is he is going to attempt to end the neoliberal rape of his country. He's going to bring dignity to over 7 million campesinos who have been living without dignity since the Fujimori era. He's going to stop the global imperialist system from just stealing the wealth from the country. As his slogan says, no more poor in a rich country. And the masses of Peru have decided. I know that liberal democracy is not revolution, but this was very much a call of the people. Because before Pedro Castillo came on the scene, everything was so fragmented. And then Pedro Castillo came in as a unifying figure. See, people don't understand that the masses of Peru are distrustful of left-wing candidates. And that comes a lot from the violence of the era of, and I'm not saying that the Shining Path are responsible for that violence, though they did commit violence. It's revolutionary people's war. But what I'm saying is that they associate the Shining Path and communists and left-wingers with war, with violence, whether they agreed with what the Shining Path were doing or not. That they hate the Renderos, they hate the war, they hate all of that, and they see that the Shining Path, was a part of that, and that's what they understand. That's what the campesinos understand. And nowadays, these people are having a different view. They're changing their tune because of people like Pedro Castillo coming in and saying, I'm not here to be, some woke skull. I'm not here to fucking tell the campesinos to start following, the elites in Lima and their progressive values. I'm here to bring dignity to the most downtrodden people in this country, and to end the neoliberal rape, and to stop the imperialist meddling. And Viva Castillo, no more poor in a rich country. What do you think, Matt?
No, I like what you said, because I'll be honest, I would prefer to see something like a People's War in Peru, but that's just the point. The word I.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think one thing people don't understand about People's War is that you have to have some section of the masses on your side. Not all of them, not the majority of them. That's not how it starts. That's certainly, and the protracted struggle is going on through the legal stage of struggle, into the illegal stage of struggle, and into the construction of socialism, all the way until we reach our goal of communism. The struggle is protracted. It is continuous. Class struggle or bust. But I think that what people who have designs on People's War, and I think that People's War is a valid form of revolution. Obviously, it's been successful in the world's largest and most populated country. It's like, that's got to say something. That's got to vindicate it to some level. And so what I think is that before these groups can truly go out and start a People's War, that they need to have a large section of the strata disgruntled enough and having their backs. And to do that, they have to appeal to their sensibilities. And that's where Western, not just Maoists, but communists in general, fall short. They not only do they dehumanize people in the third world, but they dehumanize the fourth world, right? They dehumanize and if for people who don't know, the Demarchists consider the fourth world to be colonized people within like a settler state. It's like a whole new level of oppression that needs to be distinct from just the third world, because it very much is. Because it's not happening in the third world, but these conditions for them are very much uh, comparable to third world conditions, if not worse, a lot of the time. Best example of how it's worse is look at Palestine, look at Gaza, the world's largest open air prison. And this is the shit that we really need to be talking about. With all this leftist drama that goes on YouTube, this online shit. Right now, you know what's happening? People in Arizona are dying, fighting for their lives. People in Palestine are being genocided, literally, and are fighting for the existence of their people. And the same for the indigenous people in Canada and the United States. Like, this is what's going on right now, and people just have to be so fucking petty, and I hate it, because right now, we don't need to be arguing amongst ourselves about whether China is socialist or not. That's ridiculous. It's not going to change what Chinese people.
That is getting annoying. If I can,
Yeah, this is the
that
point.
is getting just annoying, because
This is how we dehumanize the Chinese, because it's not our debate. Okay, it's the debate of 1.4 billion people who have agency and have decided a fate for themselves. A sovereign, independent people have decided this fate for themselves. And we frankly don't have room to tell them what to do unless it's affecting us. And it's not. It's not affecting me. It's not affecting that. We can't. We can be critical of a system, sure, but we don't have an alternative. The only people that have alternatives are people who have constructed it in reality. And so that would mean other socialist states. And that doesn't mean us. And so what we need to do is, we have this shit in front of us right fucking now. People are being murdered in the streets for the color of their skin. For children, even children. The state is sanctioning murder of minorities and the colonized people in the fourth world. They're sanctioning murder of the lumpen proletariat on the mass scale, because these people are disposable. These people are people that they use occasionally, but they're disposable. This is this Malthusian mindset that what we live under, that the Chinese people don't think in the same way. Like, Chinese people love their people. They want the population to grow. That's why they've allowed 3 kids to be born now. They take care of the homeless, because there are no homeless now. And this is something that we live in, this Malthusian world where the lumpen are just disposable, where they don't train us to become workers. Because if people don't know, I'm a lumpenized working class person. For my whole life, I've worked, and right now I'm lumpenized, unable to work. And so this is really like something we need to pay attention to. We have, and so I think that the most advanced recognition and the most humanizing praxis that ever existed in the United States, and you can see how it was humanizing by their earnestness, by their traveling to socialist countries, by asking them and learning from them, and not dictating to them anything. And this group never dictated to any socialist country what to do. They were focused on their shit, their community, their country. The original Black Panther Party and the ideology of socialism. And this is the example we need to follow. These people understood that, well, we may not agree with these other countries, but we go there and we learn from them, and we take from them. They took from Mao Zedong thought. They took from Juche. They took from Ho Chi Minh. They took from all of them. They took from the USSR, the Marxism-Leninism of the USSR. They took the Maoism from the Lin Biao era of China. They took all these things, but they didn't mimic it here. You didn't see them walking around in Red Guard outfits LARPing. They had their own aesthetic. They had the Black aesthetic. All power to the
urban Black aesthetic. It wasn't just Black was beautiful. It was the urban, like the real.
When I say Black, I mean the color Black, and not the color and not the culture Black. I mean, like, they would literally like dress in like leather jackets.
No. I was just backing what you were saying, like 100%.
All right, let's read some of the comments. Castillo, Rick the Cold. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ultras call him a fascist because of his social conservatism. This is another. This is Western chauvinism. We cannot project our global North values onto the values of the global South or onto people a more religious society. People don't understand how deeply important the Catholic Church and Christianity is to the people. And there's this group that got millions of votes in one of the earlier snap elections that were like a right-wing cult, but they were calling for left-wing agrarian socialism, so they were popular. And Pedro Castillo, I'm sure he saw that and he said, well, we don't need all of this crazy cult business, but I do care about the Peruvian family and the Peruvian traditions, many of these traditions, especially of the campesinos, being indigenous traditions. And whenever they see these Euro progressives from Lima who are white saying things like, you can't keep your old traditional values or national cultural autonomy, they're like, ew, I don't want to hear that. Whenever the Shining Path went out there, in its early days, today they don't do this. Today they're a very different entity. But in the early days, they were so anti-clerical and anti-tradition and this sort of like pure egalitarian sort of thing that was really common amongst 20th century revolutionaries.
That is actually one of the main reasons why, people have heard of patriarch socialism, like the original concept of patriarch socialism, which is a very advanced version of Denmarkism. But largely what started off the theory of patriarch socialism was the criticism of that exact thing you mentioned, which did happen, and that's not slander to Guzman. Nobody really believes Guzman.
No, and to be fair to Guzman, this sort of thing had succeeded in the past. This sort of trying to build a new sort of proletarian identity or peasant proletarian identity, and unfortunately, this is a part of like what I'm talking about, like the fetishization of things that are far away and unseen, things that you have not touched, things that you have not experienced. But, this sort of disconnect, and it can lead to dehumanization, but it also can lead to fetishization and rose-tinted glasses on certain things. And they see these manifestations of 20th century socialist experiments, and a lot of the time they try to imitate that, which, as Jews, we know a lot about imitation.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of what
and I think it's almost as if
that's sort of what orthodoxy is, and more specifically ultra orthodoxy. It's an attempt to sort of capture this moment in history, and it's this very pure intentions. But what we know is that when you try to do this, it always comes out distorted. You can never replicate something perfectly again, especially under different conditions and times. And while we are very protective of these people, me and Ned are, these ultra orthodox, we also recognize their problems. And
yes. But I think we would both agree that that's our business, not the business of the Gentiles.
Yeah, and anyway, we're going to have another guest here. The one, the only Falcone General.
Hey! So, what did I miss? Because I just got here.
You're perfect for this conversation. We're sort of talking about dehumanization of the third and fourth world by a lot of Western communists. And
something very common.
Yeah. And let's see what's going on here. Private chat. Was that you? Hey, it's me, Falcone. Yeah. We know it's you, Falcone.
Yeah.
Everyone, go check out Falcone. She's your favorite local neighborhood Maoist, just trying to do revolution one day at a time.
Yeah.
A part of that MRN youth and does a lot of youth organizing. We love it. We love to see it.
And we can neither confirm or deny, but we do suspect Falcone has an above-average superhuman IQ.
Yeah. Somebody asked me this in the chat.
If I knew what you knew when I was 14,
same.
I don't know where I would be today. I think I would already be constructing luxury gay space automated communism or some shit.
Well, actually, it's the very reason why Mason said no matter what he said to Trav when we were in Ohio, when I was in Ohio with him, no matter what, up the Falcone General. He's like, oh yeah, Falcone's real.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see 14-year-olds who know this much about fucking socialism and actual historical materialism, or that are even class conscious. You know, this is something of the age. This is something of the age of the early 20th century revolutionaries. You know, this is like you had a lot of young people back then that it was just like the youth leagues were way bigger than the main parties. You know, back then, and you know, something happened. I think that socialist revolution happened, and it really changed the role of the youth parties within the Soviet Union and China, and that reflected on the international communist community, which I think was detrimental because I think we needed to stay at that previous sort of mass youth stage. And people don't understand that, like, the youth leagues are not like just an appendage of the party. They're completely separate, autonomous of the parent organization, and they take ideological guidance and experience from their parent organization, but they make decisions on their own. So, for example, in Falcone's situation, say Jason makes a statement on something, and Falcone and the MRN youth aren't really down with it. They don't have to follow that, and vice versa. You know, like they're not married to each other. They are in concert with each other. You know, the youth league is a much more mass organization than, you know, the core.
Can I say something? I was gonna say this. The other thing is, there's like some other things that we never got to finish with our collab with each other because my dad had to ruin it and shit like that.
We can totally get down on that.
Yeah.
Get down. Dad, can't you see I'm talking about revolution?
As well as somebody asked me a question about Castillo. As everyone knows, I hate Castillo and I think he's a social fascist, but I'll just answer this question.
Double A's are pronounced like ya in Spanish. Castillo.
Yeah, I was gonna say this.
I know you're from the Appalachians, and Spanish isn't as common.
But he is. He shot literal Maoists. He literally was a Rendero, literally a member of the reaction.
He was a Rendero.
Over 100 years ago, Bolsheviks and Bundists couldn't stand the sight of each other. Now we're like,
yeah. I mean, that's my point. Is that I don't condemn people for like, if they make repentance for what they've done in the past. Like, let's
Castillo hasn't.
Let's give Castillo this now.
Really, because here's the thing. Castillo hasn't. He goes like, I'm still a Rendero.
Let Elizabeth finish.
Let me finish. Let me just ask one concession of you, and let's wait and see what he does, and then we can all make definite. You know, the social practice will be the evidence, right? You know, if you're correct and he starts doing some fashy shit, then you'll be vindicated, right?
Yeah.
And if he starts doing that, the people aren't going to fucking like that, and especially the campesinos who were promised so much by him. And you know, the first people the campesinos will go to, they'll go to the place, because where he was elected is where Sendero Luminoso was the most popular back in the day, and still is the most popular. So it's definitely people with a left-leaning sentiments, but if he fails them, I don't think they're going to accept it. I don't think Peru can handle another political crisis. I really don't.
From a historical lens, I would say this: like, basically, he's going to be like another Alan Garcia, in my opinion. Oh, hey, Andrew. Remember Andrew from the stream? He was the guy who had the Gonzalo profile picture and said,
yeah, I remember him. He's cool.
Yeah. Nice guy.
I actually thought about something. One thing that I will say in Falcone's defense is she's obviously very aware of it. When she says historical lens, I know where she's coming from. She's talking about that political discernment based on the patterns. I would only, however, say patterns don't always remain indefinite. I'm not saying that the pattern won't be as you'd say. It's just patterns are not always everything.
Well, if y'all really want to hear, like, really good take really good take on the Shining Path and its history after uh, Chairman Gonzalo was arrested. Go check out our stream. We talked about three People's Wars in the second half of that stream, and current People's Wars, and
Yeah.
and we both talk about what's sort of going on over there and what's happening now, and how things are
Mhm.
changing. And it's interesting. It's interesting because not only are people changing their minds about the Senderos, but the Senderos are also like they're not the same entity they were in 1993. It's a completely like they've advanced their theory and everything. They're connected with other Maoists across the world. They're not like some
Yeah.
isolated cult group like the Gonzaloites
Yeah, like the
of
Red Guards
the
and
West.
shit like that.
Oh
Yeah,
my
so people
gosh.
need to understand that like when we defend Senderos, and I'm an ML, and I have a lot of beef with them, but when we uh, defend the Sendero Luminoso, it's because like there's a lot to parse through, because there's a lot of anti-communist propaganda against them, and there's no doubts that rogue members of the party did crimes.
Like there's
There's no
no
doubts.
like
Yeah.
I kind of get what you mean. Like I think you're like talking about like the whole Cohen's Help Pro that happened or something like that.
Well,
Uh
certainly, and at that time, um, you have to realize that this wasn't a war that was like other people's wars of the past, because one, because when it was at its height, they actually were super popular and nearly beat the government. Like this is what people don't realize. And then there was a massive like if y'all don't know, there's tons of CIA documents about it where the CIA literally, aided the Fujimori government and armed
oh yeah,
them.
the CIA was scared shitless by them.
Oh
Like
yeah.
holy
Oh yeah.
fuck.
Yeah. And so people need to realize that can't we can't first of all, we have to dispel myths so we don't look like the anti-communist propaganda, right?
Yeah.
Because when you defend these groups, like people, you'll have a lot of communists say, well, I'm a communist and I like Stalin and Mao and everything, but the Shining Path were brutal and evil. Like what you're doing now is sparsing together a few factoids along with myth. And it's not a
Yeah.
real historical materialist analysis of what was happening. Like, if you're really going to give nuance to the situation there, you have to understand the situation Peru was under. Like, people don't understand what that new constitution and Fujimori did to that fucking country. And people
Yeah.
don't understand that in 1993, even the imperialist news BBC was reporting on the Shining Path in a somewhat positive light, and they said they are on the verge of winning. They could win any day now. Lima is
As well
under
as the,
siege.
as well as
Like this
the
is
other
how
thing.
fucking close they were. So they
As well
had the will of the masses. That's the thing.
Yeah, as well as I was gonna say this, like I remember I was watching Franco's stream and they were talking about Ayacucho and saying like, "Oh, Sendero Luminosa fucked up that place and shit like that." Like, I also mentioned this, like we got kind of our first, we got the PCP got their first recruits from Ayacucho because Chairman
Yeah,
Gonzalo was like a
the
university teacher.
university up there. Yeah, and that's where their base of support was in the mountains of Ayacucho and the surrounding areas, and that's where a lot of the indigenous campesinos are, and the villages are up there, and those are the
They,
people who voted Pedro Castillo into office. So
Can I suggest an idea about like Western projection upon third world movements that we see? Like we
yeah, and
really see that
that's
the
sort of the whole
Gonzaloists are
point.
by far the worst of that. Like
Yeah, and this is sort of the whole point of the stream, right? Because this is the dehumanizing of these people in these revolutions. You see, the Shining Path is like as like just like a blob of robots, doing specific.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so fucked up because if you like, I'm not a Maoist, but I was very Maoist inclined for like a year and a half for good reason. For good reason.
I was for years.
My praxis only became solid through MLM study, like for real, and learning how this shit. Oh my god, this shit's actually fucking true. Their historical views of why the Soviet Union was crumbling was completely spot on. Like a lot of people don't know this, but Maoists, they hate Trotskyism and they hate Hojism, but like really smart Maoists will borrow from Trotsky and Hoja. And then they'll say like with Hoja, their alliance is that they believe they have a line. They believe they have a monopoly on Hoja. You should ask.
Honestly, there's nothing Trotsky that is ever brought to the table.
But what's interesting though is the praxis of Maoism, or like the way that it connects is. I do think is way better than ML, but I think what Maoists keep forgetting though is that they are very retrospective in their theory. It is a retrospective theory. In fact, it had and the thing is when you treat the way that these Gonzaloists are, how embarrassing they are to third and first and even fourth. Like you have like Lakota Maoists actually, by the way. So you have Fourth World as well, and technically, but the Palestinians that would be Fourth World, who are now contacting Jason.
Yeah, the Democratic Front for the People's Liberation.
Gonzaloists have to go. There's an actual demand by a lot of these revolutionaries in the first, third, and fourth. Asking us why we're not denouncing them. It's getting like heated up and shit because they don't represent Peru.
So I'm an ML, but I agree with the Maoist Palestinian Liberation Organization over the ML one. For one simple reason, and it's on tactics. The People's Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the ML one, is a purely military entity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Democratic one, now Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, it's a military institution and a civilian institution. They do social work, building, like what Maoists do in liberated areas.
Serve the people is like a doc. Yeah. Serve the people is philosophy in Maoism. That's what. Like,
for example, I could go through like some historical things. Like, I don't know if it would be considered as like me going historical materialism because like I lack some of it to admit that.
That's okay.
Historical materialism is true, Pop Honey, but it's flawed. Don't worry. We should all study it.
Sometimes you unintentionally come out with the historical materialist line, and you know why that is not because you like deeply study it or anything. It's because once someone reaches class consciousness, they will start to read history through historical materialism because you understand things through the lens of class now instead of the liberal understanding of history.
Yeah, I was gonna say this. Like, I remember, like, the Philippines, like, they do like mass work by gaining like the support of farmers, as well as Naxals. Like, there's like a poll showing this that like I think almost 60% say this. Like, their lives have improved much better under Naxal control than under the Indian fascist state.
If y'all want to see some stuff that the Naxals do, this documentary is about 11 years old, but it's really good.
I didn't say like documentary. I was saying like a poll.
No, I know. I know you said poll, but this will give people an insight to see what's actually happening in these zones.
Yeah.
It's a film called Red Ant Dream. And it's got English subtitles, but it's in their local languages that they're speaking. And it follows one armed group with young people, talking about, what they do out there and their experiences and their troubles. And then they go into this village of peasants, Indian peasants, whose water source is being destroyed. And forest is being destroyed by this mining company that came into the area. And so one of these people that works for one of their mass organizations isn't a militant, but works for one of these peasant mass organizations, is out there organizing these people. And they were able to halt the construction of this place through that action and stuff. So it shows you what they're doing out there and how they're helping the people, and that while there are problems with what's going on, that what they're doing is improving, is helping tangibly improve people's lives. That's what they're trying to do, and that's what they're succeeding in a lot of cases.
And I remember in Peru they had this under liberated areas where it's called the People's Councils, where
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of like how they're trying to do like a version of like the People's Communes, I think, where like they were trying to like have like basically where they would collectively like do farming, and they said this is like kind of their attempt at building like real socialism and shit like
Yeah,
that.
let me give you an example of that in history, and where they kind of get that idea from. If you didn't know, Soviet means council in Russian. So
Mm-hmm.
the United Socialist Council Union, and so that's how on a on a larger scale, that's how they were organized. The country was organized through these councils, local councils and stuff, and they originally did. And when it came to the presence, they did the I forget the Russian word, but the collective farms, and they had the collective farm councils and everything, and it was
Yeah.
super highly democratic and super radical. And this happened in China as well, and it's and it was a super radical time in socialism, like a real attempt at like of something, and a lot of it was successful, tremendously successful. The collectivization in the Soviet Union stopped or mitigated the famine, the Ukraine famine, and saved millions of lives. And the same in China, that the collectivization of agriculture during the famine that happened at the end of the Great Leap Forward and the beginning of the Cultural Revolution, and throughout the Cultural Revolution, was mitigated by the economic collectivization. Now, that's not saying that during the Cultural Revolution, y'all know what I feel about the social actions there, but economically, that collective effort during the times of famine, of agriculture, collectivizing agriculture is ideal, and so collectivized agriculture still exists in a lot of these places, just in different forms now, and you have collective farms still, but also you have like individual tenant farms as well, which is questionable for a lot of people, but it's a mixed system in a lot of these places nowadays. But in the beginning, that was the only way they could save their country, and
Yeah.
it was wonderful. And that's sort of historical context, like why this was a great idea. It was a way to give the people in these liberated zones. It was a way for them to have the fruits of their labor, quite literally. It was a way to have the fruits of their labor, the potato harvests and stuff. Like, it's just important to them, and important to indigenous culture, especially Andean indigenous culture. The potato is where the potato comes from, and so like this is what it's all about there. And whenever the corporations are taking most of what the land is, their land, and taking their land and making them work it and taking most of the value and produce from them, that's bullshit. And so whenever the Sendero came in and collectivized it and gave them democratic rights over their shit again, like it was before the colonizers came, that was like, whoa, this is amazing. Giving people back their dignity, their agency in life, giving them real tangible power. That's what power is. Power isn't anything. Power is giving people the agency in social matters, in political matters, and economic matters.
All
It's
power to the
nothing.
people.
All power to the people.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I would like to, if it's okay, I actually have a list of interesting insights on people's democracies and why they are actually more popular in the third world than socialism, even. Although socialism is usually an endgame idea that they have in mind, if you permit me.
Yeah, sure. I think that's very compelling.
So this is largely why the patriotic socialists are very vehement about their viewpoints about the fourth position. Not to be confused with the third position, but the idea like the third position is largely from their point of view an inevitability because of these short lenses of communist and anarchist theories. And so like
short
one
lenses.
thing,
That's interesting. Short lenses?
yeah, so Jaha Maria, listen, there is parallels between Jaha Maria of Libya and the Cultural Revolution under Mao Zedong.
In what way?
Oh, yes. Dr. Weisfeld, by the way, knew Stokely Carmichael. Now, Falcone, you said you loved Jason Evers. Hold on. Let me point this out. You told me you loved the anti-colonialism series. I noticed you even
Yeah, it was good. I actually
remember,
like.
Right, cool. Do you remember Stokely Carmichael, who was later known as Kwame Ture?
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I took this. Oh, I remember. I used this one quote from him. Want me to tell you what the quote was?
Sure.
I'll
But
try
let
to
me tell you something that you might be very interested in knowing.
Wait, it said this. It said this. If you are not studying guerrilla warfare and its connection to the masses in the party, then you're not being revolutionary. I remember I used that quote to describe like some like people who I describe as like class reductionists who are antagonistic towards revolution.
Yeah. So this is what I
Stop
think.
using dialectics.
So Stokely Carmichael or Kwame Ture, he knew Dr. Weisfeld.
Fuck. Wait,
Yeah.
what?
And this is why like this is what by the way since this will be the first time Elizabeth will see how me and Dark Snovia have to like often get you inclined to follow certain instructions, because it's that thing, we don't actually tell this kid what to do. That's the thing. Like the arch rules.
If you tell me what to do, I won't.
Yeah, the arch rules she takes very seriously. If we say this is an actual official MRN rule going in the MRN rulebook, that she'll take seriously. But like the tidbits for us adults cannot be the same.
We're just old heads. We're just old heads with experience that she recognizes as valuable. But also at the same time, like, youth frankly means age doesn't mean anything. I know experience means
basically like it's basically kind of reminds me of Aaliyah's song called "Age Ain't Nothing But a Number."
But what I was saying, what I was trying to say before is that what you notice is that we don't really like we negotiate the terms of what's going to happen. We're like, and it's a struggle. It's a struggle. This kid struggles with
dialogue. It's dialogue. It's Socratic dialogue, which is related to dialectics inevitably.
And I noticed like you have what me and Dark Stovia have with this, because she's difficult, but like she's smart, and it's hard to tell a kid to hold back, because then it's like you feel you're telling the kid to practice liberalism, then the kid calls you on it, kid is like a conscience when I say that, and I wanted to express that to her because she's like, stop talking to me like I'm a child. And I wasn't saying that because like I recognize Falcone as a woman, because in Judaism, you're a woman as soon as you're 12. Actually, you're just.
I said this like, don't call me
an adult until they're 20. That's the thing we hold. Nobody's an adult until you're 20. We also believe that.
I believe you're not an adult till 18.
Well, I mean, here's how I see it. I mean, children are children, and right, regardless of how much you know, you can be smarter than all of us, but you're still a kid. I respect you, though. I don't see you lesser than me because you are a kid. You may have less experience and less time in the books than us, but just because I've had all these fucking years to read doesn't mean I'm better than you. It just means that I had all those years to fucking read all that shit. That's what it means. I had the opportunity with all this time in my life to get a job in China and go live over in these other places. Like, it doesn't make me better than anyone else. But experience is valuable, and we should learn from it. But also, we have to understand that the youth always bring new ideas. Let me give you an example of how the youth are so essential to our movement. Okay, two examples, actually. One, in the United States, our most advanced praxis that has existed came from the Black Panther Party and Pantherism. And who founded this idea, and how old was he when this came out? Well, Hugh Newton was, one of the figureheads of this, and he was 22 when the Black Panther Party was founded, right? 22 years old. And that decision to do that and to take that leap, that most other Marxists at the time would say, oh, that's that you can't do that. You're too young. You don't have enough experience. Blah 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 blah. And he did it. And guess what? It worked. And if it wasn't for COINTELPRO, and now we know in hindsight we know how to stop COINTELPRO. But back then they didn't have that same. These were pioneers. This was an experiment. Literally, it's the lab of the revolution. What these places are, and he was 22, and everyone else in the black. There were no old heads at founding the Black Panther Party. They had, of course, they learned from old heads, but the Black Panther Party was youth. It was youth injected, and what it did was advance theory, North American Marxist theory, further than it's ever been. And you look at, let's give another example in the global South, Turkey. I guess that's kind of like the second world, I should say. But Turkey.
I would call Turkey a first world nation.
I forget his name. His name was Ibrahim something.
Ibrahim Papaya. But I'll be right back. I have to use the bathroom.
He was 20. He was 26 when he founded the Communist Party of Turkey, and was assassinated like the subsequent year. And
I'm actually reviewing Turkish history right now because I'm very rusty and I used to know a little bit. I mean, but I never knew as much as I should. So I'm actually studying Turkish history.
I'm a supporter of the TKP, but I'm very sympathetic to the Maoist struggles within Turkey as well. Just as sympathetic as I am towards other people's wars. It's kind of like this thing where they have chosen their path, and from my distant perspective, I'm like, I don't know about that, but I can't make any definite conclusions about that. My duty as an internationalist is to stand in solidarity for those fighting for justice, and that's exactly what these people are doing, fighting for justice. And that's what we need to really step back and look at as revolutionaries. Like, do we want ideological purism, or do we want justice, dignity, humanity, and the uplifting of the masses?
I realize that you really do share that in common with Mason Steiner, where you're like one of the few MLs that say, "Hey, Pantherism should be ours too." We have to be sympathetic at least to this. I understand.
I'm not just sympathetic to Pantherism. I believe Pantherism is very advanced and should be. Now, I don't think that it's perfect. It obviously isn't perfect because they were quashed by COINTELPRO. But also, we have so much to learn about COINTELPRO from them as well, and what we can do now about that. And we can see, one of the best COINTELPRO groups I've seen is the Patriotic Socialists out of Demarchism. They have amazing COINTELPRO, and maybe they're not that public, but they're ingratiated with their communities, and that's what matters.
Can I say something? I remember, I think you also left out this when it came to the Black Panther Party, the whole split between the Cleaver faction and the Huey P. Newton faction as well. Where I think I'm going to do a podcast next.
Was later Republican. He's an interesting figure.
Actually, I have a lot of insights about what was going on with the splits and everything.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Comrade Matt actually knows a lot about Eldridge Cleaver, which makes it interesting. What I think is that, Eldridge Cleaver was an unknowing victim of COINTELPRO at the time, and then once he sort of saw it in hindsight, he embraced it. So, and Huey P. Newton was also a victim, but he knew it, which is why he was behind bars. Fred Hampton knew what was going on, which is why
Hampton was too pure.
Which is why he was shot. Well, yeah, I actually went with a group of local communists when I was in Louisiana to his grave, and we cleaned it up the best we could. It has a lot of bullet holes in it from racists, but
I'm jealous.
It's a small. He's from it's in his hometown, a small town in Louisiana.
I'm gonna say this. Shouldn't we count the Black Panther Party as like Marxism, Marxist-Leninist Mao Zedong thought, or no?
No, I don't.
The Panthers were the Panthers.
I think what I can say is that they were influenced by Mao Zedong thought, and they were influenced by the Cultural Revolution era. But they left behind a lot of parts that they didn't like. and they adapted it for them. They loved Juche, they loved the DPRK, they adopted a lot of Juche that they liked, but they abandoned the shit they didn't jive with, as they would have said back in the day. We didn't. They didn't jive with.
And that is at the root of the social practice of Maoism. That ability to do that through dialectical application.
So I think what it was, Falcone, is that Maoism wasn't a thing back then, but I see it as like sort of an organic expression of that Maoist
continuity rupture. It's as the Maoists do say, they are correct about themselves. They're a continuity and they are a rupture, and that's why there still is like infighting between ML and MLM. It's not that ideologically or even on the streets, like these guys really hate each other. Like
to me at the time, people like the Black Panther Party were Marxist-Leninists who were not down with Khrushchevite stuff.
Yeah.
And that sort of colors their worldview. And they're more oriented towards the third world, and of course the fourth world, which wasn't really defined back then, but towards the third. That's what they were oriented towards, because they recognized real. These are the colonized people that freed themselves. We can learn from these people. And what was beautiful about the original Black Panther Party is that it doesn't matter if they were Maoists or anything. I mean, they weren't dogmatic like those old Mao Zedong thought people. They were dialectical to the core. They understood that Marxism, Leninism was their tool, but it was not a framework. They didn't, they didn't see it as we're going to do this, what the Soviets do. We're going to build a Soviet. No, we're going to build a party for us.
I would also like to point out one thing that I can't stand also about dealing with these Gonzaloists who, like, I know Shining Falcone, I know Shining Path is not how you like to say it, but like, you want to know why? What people say the West? People say that like the Empire says Shining Path, which is true. But Shining Path became a hip word for a while in the 80s, and I'm not kidding you. It became I'm trying to say something that's not very well known about the 80s, like the American Maoists in the 80s. Like, this is the kind of shit Jason's been on lately. You know what I mean? With Maoist anarchist alliances, he's been like, we're trying to save the reemergence of an alliance that may actually save people from this racist country, if you know what I mean. And there's back in the 80s, with Reagan. Hold on, with Reagan.
Racist? You don't.
If you remember Reagan, if you remember, like any, like, maybe you wouldn't because you weren't there, but like if you develop memory through watching a lot of documentaries and then talking to the older people about that, you will realize how terrifying the 1980s were with Ronald Reagan and the way it shifted everything to the right.
Well, and especially in 1985 specifically, like, he ushered in neoliberalism. He was already like the super anti, trying to take down communists all over the world. But then in 1985, Glasnost and Perestroika happened. Socialism fell. In my opinion, socialism fell. But the key to this is that this entity stopped challenging Western hegemony in 1985, right? In 1985, the Soviet Union dissolved. Now you have a unipolar world led by the United States and its Western imperialist allies.
A lot of people also don't know that the whole squatter thing of the punks and everything, that was just as much as Maoist as it was anarchist back then. It's just the anarchists were more numerous about it.
I think people don't realize how involved Marxist-Leninists are with squatting in Europe.
But do you want to know? Not many people know this because it's not recorded on paper. And I learned this from an OG. Like, he was like an OG, like Mim Rim, like Maoist Internationalist Movement, Revolutionary Internationalist Movement, like member person.
Maoist Internationalist Movement, like the Ray of Light.
Well, let me finish. I mean, I'm talking about an OG. Okay, here's the thing. He told me, do you know where the concept of continuity and rupture in Marxism, like how he is like, you know what it means to say Maoism is a continuity and rupture in Marxism, Leninism? I said, no, I'm not sure what that means. And he's like, it actually is talking about the Black Panther Party being a continuity and rupture. It's a code. It's a street code. It's like, he said that's why a lot of us are inclined to RIM, because RIM really, like, our part in it was very informative, But what was sad about that is he was kind of talking about the bullshit of the Gonzaloists, which the way that they fetishized like everything that happens in Peru or happened in Peru. And like this guy had told me that the word shining path, even though it was a Western slur largely because based on something that was said, whatever, by Jose. Like Fat Tony knows what I'm talking about. The word shining path became the word shining path became a very, very almost spiritual meaning to like people in the 80s out here. And that's and that's why the Gonzaloites, like I would say, are people who almost dehumanize the third world, because it's not just the third world, but they're dehumanizing the actual sacred receiving that certain poor people did in the United States at that time when they would hear the word shining path, because when the empire was scared of this word, the shining path, so that was like encouragement, like to poor people, and a lot of people. What I'm trying to say is that's what makes a lot of that fetishization and the Orientalism that you say so sickening, is because you're actually treading on what's sacred. Because, like you said, like robots, they're treated like robots and shit. But no, like these were people who lived and died for the revolution. They probably were romantics. A lot of them were probably poets and doctors, and I don't think that that's often considered.
I just want to.
Matt, you have
what?
I'm echoing off Falcone.
What?
I'm echoing off Falcone. Can you mute yourself for a second?
Yeah.
Hello.
I was gonna say.
Wait, one second. I just wanted to say briefly that I don't support the MIM at all. I think RIM was dope until the end, but I think MIM is certainly a weird thing. To me, it just seems like one guy in Michigan. But MIM prisons, on the other hand, now that was a good thing. That was actually like a Maoist movement organizing prisoners, lumping prisoners within, which is awesome. And I think that whenever I was in the PCUSA and I lived in Louisiana for a short time, I lived right next to this. I stayed right next to this prison, right? And I asked the party if I could like go and officially sanction going in there and like talking with prisoners and bringing them radical literature and stuff. They're like, no, we don't focus on that. They're lumping. And I said, what are you talking about? Like, if we could organize like the millions of lumpen and disgruntled people within prison, like the people who are in there who aren't pieces of shit, who are mostly just victims of the system, like it would be amazing. It would be amazing, and that's something that like the Black Panther Party started organizing in prisons. It started with them, and the Communist Party never did this. They always rejected the lumpen. Now, today, the Communist Party takes a very different stance. The CPUSA takes a very different stance on the lumpen. They're a lot more sympathetic, but still has issues. They're not as radical as I'd like them to be, because I'm very pro-lumpen, and I believe that I believe in the leading revolutionary role of lumpen in the United States specifically.
I was going to say this. The other thing is this I remember is when I learned this, that some of the bases for the PCP were prisons. They use like prisons as like kind of like military bases, something like that.
Yeah, I mean imagine you liberate a prison, right? You chase off the guards. Now you have a bunch of people who hate the Peruvian government, and you're like, hey, y'all want to help us?
Like that.
They probably looked at the records and kept the rapists and murderers and stuff in there, but liberating the people who were political prisoners and just victims of capitalism and circumstance, like, gosh, imagine if we could, because these are the people who have all the right in the world to hate the state, right? These are people you'd be talking to. These are the people who would, like, at this point, if they're in prison, they've committed felonies. They are rejected from society. They don't even have the pittance of voting anymore or owning a firearm. They don't have that even. So these are the people who have literally nothing to lose and want to win the world. So why would you reject these? Why would you dismiss this energy, this revolutionary energy and potential? Just put it aside because Marx said in the 1800s that lumpens were bad. Lumpens bad. It's like you should know just as well as anyone that we're not fucking dogmatic and orthodox about this shit. I mean, it started with Lenin by saying, well, it doesn't just have to be the working class, it could be the peasants. And that gave credence to the idea that maybe a substrata of the working class, the lumpen proletariat, also have that same revolutionary potential. And that's what Maoists recognized before anyone else. And if we don't look at that, then we're going to be, well, it ain't going to be good. I might say, by the way, y'all, my screen is frozen, so I can't actually see any comments that have been happening. So I'm sorry about that.
It's Oh, somebody's saying they like my hair. Yeah, I put it into a ponytail for the first time in forever.
Oh, I do. I do like your hair. Curly-haired people unite. But your curls are so much tighter than mine and nicer.
More natural, these curls. I can't. I would need to. I would literally need to like get something to even straighten my hair or something like that.
Don't do it; it'll fry it. The natural hair is beautiful. Don't let colonizers tell you you have to straighten it.
Like me, I would want to basically just like darken my hair like a basically a darker black.
Also do whatever you want with your hair, because playing with my hair was one of the things that helped me discover maybe I'm not cis. Like changing hair colors and stuff, and some sort of like I got pink hair one time and I was like, why does this make me so fucking boring? Jeez, I look like a fucking lesbian right now. I love this. I look like a dyke. I loved it so much.
I got an idea. In purple, then you become the pink purple girl.
I did have pink hair once. I'll have to show you some pictures sometime. I got my hair colored all the time in China because it was so cheap to go to the salon. It would like these nice ass salons where they give you tea and massage your hair and shit, and give you free smokes.
I don't know if pink supposed to be plagiarized.
It costs like 3 RMB, which is like, gosh, that's like around 50 cents, maybe give or take, for like getting your hair cut, getting your hair colored. It was dope. And I was like, why is this so cheap? How do y'all even fucking make money? They're like, all our products are fucking cheap as dirt. I was like, oh, because everything's Chinese and the import product from China, everything in China is really low priced because the government.
Almost all of my Lego sets, literally the plastic of this is all just like made in China. Literally everything made in China. This made in China. Oh wow, it's kind of funny.
It's plastic and it's plastic
packaging. That Trump really couldn't make America great again after all. You still don't see made in America. It's all made in China. Take that, Trump.
Yeah. And the funniest part is the majority of those factory workers, they have no idea what these MAGA hats are. They just think they're regular, normal ass hats. And the ones that can read it are like, oh, okay, just a patriotic hat, I guess. They have no idea about the political context. They know about Trump. They hear all the news when he does beats and gas, just like anywhere else. But it's just like media over there isn't like how it is over here. It's just not the same. Ours is so fucking busted. Oh my god.
Basically, I hate the media entirely. The media is just complete shit. Like, for real.
The only people you can tell for independent journalists, people who aren't tied to the bourgeoisie. That's it.
Yeah, basically, like, now I'm trying to do more of becoming like a news channel, really. Where now I had to do this.
I look forward to your weekly protracted People's War updates every week. I'm so excited because
I couldn't do it for this week because I was in New York.
One of my favorite things to do is all the time check what's going on in these conflicts. Like ever since I got into communism, I always check what's going on with my comrades. I'm always like, what the fuck's happening today? And now I don't have to do that because you're for me. Thanks.
So
Bless you. What's up, Nick?
So I kind of did this week because one, I was busy in New York. I was actually supposed to meet up with some comrades from the Black Panther study group that I'm in, where
Whoa.
we were going to talk. I think about like other things as well. Like we could have talked about revolutionary suicide, or basically like how the Red Guards are feds and yada yada yada, and all that basic shit. And, but I was literally on a tight schedule, so I couldn't do shit really. I was only able to make 2 videos, like why I don't like Jimmy Dore for like a critique from him from the left, and having to talk about the book Settlers again.
I'm so tired
I got
of talking about. There's 2 things I never want to talk about again. It's settlers and China. Just don't fucking talk to me anymore. I'm joking, of course.
I feel the same
I
way.
didn't talk about China. I said Jimmy Dore.
No, it's not the point.
No,
it's not the point. It's like everything. It's like everything is made about settlers in China now. It's like everything.
Everyone just wants to fucking bust balls over settlers in China, and I'm just like, there's such thing as like,
or just combine it to this one Twitter account where it's called this Dangism Sakaiism, and then you got this guy named Genghis Khan who is literally in Imperial Japan.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Literally, he is just like so fucking larpy over China. And he was also exposed as like a fascist, where literally he supports like Turkey and believes the Armenian genocide didn't happen.
That's like okay, like that's a trigger. Let's not talk about that right now. Because
he has the Japanese flag, and literally he calls himself.
I'm in the middle of an impassioned script about why the Turkish imperialism is on the rise in its own right. Because like everybody thinks it's
just like it's Syria,
they want the North Syria,
Armenia. But anyway, let me continue. What I was saying about what was I fucking talking about? Help me, Falcon.
Well, we were going to talk about the global south, and I was going to mention some examples of third world.
And I was talking about me being on a tight schedule, and I was going to talk about like basically how I got so much back. Like I was talking about how I got backlash for talking about Jimmy Dore at all, and literally people think I was agreeing with
Why do people feel the need to defend Jimmy Dore? Jimmy Dore is nothing special. He's a center left populist. Like he's nothing special.
He's not special.
It's so funny. It's just they believe literally like they just believe he just because he platforms the gray zone means he's automatically base, but he doesn't platform smaller journalists or activists like Vanessa Beatley, who is a British journalist who's living in Syria, exposing the bullshit Western media lies about Syria. Which also,
so for me,
I think
people like that are worthless unless they're talking about anti-imperialism, right? To me, unless they're platforming anti-imperialist and talking about imperialism, their left-wing populism means nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I know I have so much beef with left-wing populism because it's vague, but
it's usually completely anti-Semitic.
I can vibe with it. If it's anti-imperialist, I can vibe with it, right?
Yeah.
Like if something's anti-imperialist, I can vibe.
Yeah.
As well as like they forget this when I mentioned this that literally Jimmy Dore and his wife got my friend fired from the media network I work for.
What the fuck?
Because they wanted to defend a grift of a party called MPP. Have you ever heard of Movement for People's Party? That shit, Jimmy.
I heard that there was a lot of hope in the beginning and that people got fucked over.
Yeah, I interviewed the people who got fucked over. One of those people who got fucked over.
This is why we just can't tell this kid what to do. It's like, man, righteousness, I'm not going to stand in your way.
One of those people who got fucked over was the PR director for the media network, and we were hosting the Solution Summit, and
I remember that.
She got fired because literally Jimmy's like I think Jimmy had his wife basically go like, you better fire this woman because she is a petitioner and she's been on Twitter exposing our grift of a party. And I need you to fire her or we're not coming to the Solution Summit. Me or my husband or Graham Elwood, who wants to call one of my friends a Fed, or Ron Falcone will come on to this summit.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
literally, they literally forced a small media network to fire their PR director
And this is where
because
it comes down to
for
a simple quote from Che, a simple quote from Che that really boils down the difference between us and people like that. If you tremble with indignation at every injustice, then you are a comrade of mine. Jimmy Dore does not tremble with indignation at every injustice.
like for real. Like
It's
he gets
simple as
so
that.
much
If you don't
money
have,
from he
yeah,
gets like
it's
so much
just a
money
dance,
from
you know. Like these people, what you have to realize when people make their careers, start making their careers off of left wing journalism, whether they're communists, anarchists, populists, social democrats, socialists, whatever they are. If they start, if they make their career, they are no longer invested in bringing you the truth. They're invested in making money to survive. And that's not to say that it's not okay to make money this way. What I'm saying is that what they're providing you now is no longer something that is of pure intent. It has now been clouded by capital. So that's what people need to realize, that whenever it becomes someone's source of income, they're motivated.
Paul Morin. Sorry.
Yeah, Paul Moore. Then you're motivated to do things that aren't right, that are incorrect, objectively incorrect, because you are, or you're willing to do things that shittier journalists would do to get clicks, and it
I was gonna
sucks.
I was gonna say something. Like for example, I remember he makes so much money off of working class people. He only uses that money for him and his show, and not to fund movements or Communist Party or
Or even
anti-imperialist
donate,
action. He doesn't do that.
or even donate to like the local Antifa or something. Nothing.
Like literally, you know what this fucker does? He literally, they got so mad at me on the comment section, thinking I was agreeing with BreadTube or just being a
Yeah.
dishonest actor. When literally Jimmy Dore has literally got my friends fired for smaller people to fire people, and also literally attack smaller channels as well as not platform literal other people like underrated journalists like Vanessa Beatley, Eva Barnett, or Whitney Webb, or a bunch of other people who also deserve a kind of platform, that kind of platform that Jimmy has, and literally doesn't even platform them. He platforms already established people like the Gray Zone. Like no offense to the Gray Zone,
It's
or already
networking.
established people
It's
like
networking. It's
yeah.
networking. It has nothing to do with putting out a message. It has everything to do with, you come on my channel, and we will boost each other's views, and we'll cross over some of our subscribers and get more for each of us. And that's a basic YouTube tactic. And again, that's not wrong. I think we all bring each other on channels, one, primarily because we like each other and we have good discussions, but secondly because it does help. We do help each other. Whenever a Falcone comes on here, some of my people go over to her, and whenever she shares my stuff, whenever she's on here, um, some of her people come to me, and the same with Net, and the same with I know y'all have some beef with them, but the Red Lettuce people, and the same with when Ramiro came on, and the same with all these people. We do it because for two reasons. One, we like what we're talking about, and we think it's good to get that message out there and get different perspectives. And two, it helps build us up. It does.
Yeah. The other thing is like literally like I haven't seen like Jimmy Dore like one of my Peruvian friends was texting me. like Jimmy Dore like supporting like the MCS network that Nico House made, even though Nico House has some shady associations with the social fascists like Jack Posobiec, but literally made this like MCS network, which is literally a dedicated media network to exposing corruption, like basically actually bringing real journalism and shit like that. And literally, I haven't seen Jimmy basically help out that network really at all. Literally, I only seen him on Nico House like once out of this
So
whole
I
year
compel
of
people.
2021.
Yeah, so I compel people to follow um, online journalists who are involved
This is
Oh,
making me
directly.
very
here's
antsy.
an online journalist
And
that I recommend people check out. His name is Robbie Jagar, and he's actually exposed a bunch of corruption. He has found documents
Cool.
of money laundering and all this other shit where he literally found literally big pharma funding of politicians, uh, oil, and also they're covering this thing called the Colonial Pipeline, which is an oil pipeline that's supposed
Yeah.
to go through
this
the
is all
black.
making me angry now.
Yeah, the Canadian, the Keystone Pipeline.
Please.
Oh, not the
It's
Keystone
just
Pipeline. It's the Colonial Pipeline that goes through like the
Oh,
Black Belt, you know, like the Deep South.
oh,
yes.
I know, I know. It's the one. It's the one that comes from the coast of Texas all the way through the Black Belt to the other Atlantic coast, right? Is that
No,
right?
it comes like from like the north, like to Virginia, all the way
Oh,
down to Texas. That's
Texas.
what's gonna happen.
So I've been very like good,
It's
you
the
know,
land
and
of the spears and the spears.
I've not shouted down on women or anything like that. And I just wanted to know if I would be graced to like say a few things, because like I was asked to talk about the third world, and I was going to bring up the global south to my knowledge, my limited knowledge of it,
Okay,
and limited.
now you're stepping on eggshells.
Venezuela, how they also have to fit into like some of these pipelines, like in Texas.
Okay, all right, all right. I will speak of Venezuela, but that's very special to me as as I'm close to the patriotic socialists who are very close to Bolivarianism. You know,
Yeah, I'm a supporter. But anyway, Net, let's just make it clear that you don't have to walk on
it's
eggshells
like
like
having
that.
a cute it's like having a cute Maoist fox like mocking my demarchy.
The anarchy, the tragedy, the tragedy.
Oh, no,
The
no, no,
tragedy,
seriously.
the tragedy.
Yeah, I have a confession to make. I'm a crypto demarchist slash Maoist and third worldist, and I've been tricking you this whole time. Aha, aha, ha ha.
Uh,
I'm joking, but hey, Net, you can go ahead and
Speak your piece.
Yeah, I
Oh,
would love to do
it. You're so lucky I like you, kid. So, all right. So, people's democracies are typically more popular in the third world than socialism, but usually the people who are of this mindset do hold socialism as an end game, and a lot of times they are suspicious of the very term communism. Although, to be fair, it's basically the same as you'd find somebody like me. It's not too much of a big idea. Communism, that's cool. The concept of this really shines through two concepts: Maria and Bolivarianism.
I really, I defend the Bolivarian Revolution on anti-imperialist terms, and I do recognize its positive contributions. I am an absolute supporter of Jamahariya and all of its aspects. Like, I
Yes,
really
Maria is much more the end game. There are a couple problems, and I will give a criticism of Bolivarianism, but then I'm going to defend it. And then I'm going to literally sound like I'm flip flopping, because I think that you have to give both sides to understand, because I think that people miss a lot on that stuff.
Synthesis, antithesis, we're dialecticians. That's all you're doing.
Yes.
Maybe it's not Marxist dialectics, but you are using dialectics.
I could never learn dialectics from Marx. I went straight. I'm not kidding. I went straight to. I went straight to Trotsky and Stalin. I was like, no, Marx is terrible. My introduction
Mao-
was ABC.
Mao
My
is my
introduction was the
favorite.
ABC of Dialectics by Trotsky, and then I read Dialectical Historical Materialism by Stalin. I was like, oh, and then all of a sudden I was
That's a
like,
great one.
okay, now I understand.
That book gave me
Can I
it was like a light
interrupt?
switch in my head. Dialectical and historical
Can I,
material.
So anyway,
It was like
can I interrupt because I gotta answer this comment from Ramiro. He literally thinks I was drinking horchata. No, I was not drinking horchata. I was drinking some
hey,
fruit.
solidarity. Oh, you know what? This guy can
that
tell
Romero?
you what I've been trying to tell you people. Like, you should highlight him.
Oh.
Like, this guy could testify to what me and Jason are trying to tell people. In the third
Oh.
worldists are either called ML or MLM. No, like people like take things way out of context.
Oh, I also want to ask Ramiro, have you got in contact with Vanessa Beatley yet? Because that's the one thing. Because I recommended Ramiro to bring on that journalist I talked about, who's from the UK, who's now living in Syria, and debunking like the Western media's lies about what's happening in Syria. Yeah,
Go
I
to my
told him.
very first video on this channel all those years ago, 4 or 5 years ago now. It was called
Okay, back to what you were
Why
saying.
communists should support the Syrian government. You know, that's what I started this like an anti-imperialist note. But anyway, continue, Nat.
Right, but first of all, solid solidarity, Ramiro. By the way, Jason wants to collaborate with you on something to do with Honduras and stuff like that. He's got like he wanted to interview about you on things like that.
Oh, I remember I talked about how like women are killed and like how women are getting killed in Honduras for like a bunch of money.
Yeah,
I think.
Honduras
Yeah,
has a horrible femicide problem. The femicide in Latin America is really bad, but in Central America, it's horrific. In Mexico, too, femicide is very high. It's unfortunate.
Plus, like my grandmother had to flee El Salvador in like the 90s.
Oh, you're El Salvadorian. El Salvadorian. One of my great friends growing up was, well, he was an older man who was an illegal immigrant here. But like I would always hang out with him, and whenever I was younger, you know, we would have beers and stuff. Whenever I was like a teenager, he didn't care. He's from a different culture, and he didn't speak any English.
Romero.
I love you, Romero. Sorry, my screen is frozen, so I can't really bring up comments right now. But we love you, Romero. Everyone can subscribe to him.
I can check the comment section, but I was gonna mention this other thing is this, like, I actually have a plan to use like this like some of this like land we own in El Salvador, because also I'm trying to get dual citizen. Like later on in my life, I will get dual citizenship to even own that crap. But basically use that as like kind of like a safe space as well, or community safe space, really.
So anyway, about people's democracies. So my introduction, which I was so kindly interrupted by you guys, but that's okay. Like that. No grudges. Anyway, so I'm wearing my dress today. I'm sorry. Anyway, people's democracies. All right. Like the intro I said was, Stokely Carmichael, otherwise known as Kwame Ture. He actually knew Dr. Weisfeld. They also both knew Gaddafi. Dr. Weisfeld did know Gaddafi.
Remember when Gaddafi gave all those Qurans to those Italian models? That was awesome. I fucking love Muammar Gaddafi so much. May he rest in power, and may the criminals.
The one thing I'm lacking.
Now it is true, however, that Weisfeld kind of regretted the position he took when Gaddafi was overthrown because there were things, but. PSFM does have a recording of not just apology, but a foresight on how to avoid false revolutions in the Middle East, particularly, and what to be very careful of, which rhetoric to be careful of, even among the academics.
You can spot them from a mile away, though. It's not like they're hard to hide. If the
there's a lot of retrospective view we've had just since 9/11, believe it or not. Like 9/11 itself gave us a very strong current pattern to understand the world through. If you think about it, a lot of things changed immediately.
Not gonna lie, if there was like something that was gonna happen in the Middle East, and literally the only revolutions I would support are like revolution, communist revolution.
Well, no, like we should have seen 9/11 coming because of what was actually going on with the policies of the Mujahideen fighters and everything like that in the CIA. We should have seen that coming a freaking mile away. Because, like, if anybody ever wants to see Rambo 3 and then tell me that that's pretty much Al Qaeda propaganda, you're an idiot.
To the brave fighters of the
Yes.
Those are the same people that use American stingers to shoot down Apaches.
And how many people have seen Hillary Clinton talk about how we were so mean to the Mujahideen and then we called them terrorists and we should be nice to them again? Next thing you know, ISIS is starting to show up everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
anyway,
like
people's democracy.
people,
But anyway,
here's my
people's
spicy
democracy.
take. Well, I
People's
just want to say
democracy.
my spicy take. The Taliban. I am on the side of the Taliban in Afghanistan.
In that sense, me too. I don't particularly care for them, but
No,
I
I
respect
don't like them
I
at all.
respect their sovereignty. I do respect their sovereignty. I do.
Well, I don't think they should have had
They
sovereignty.
don't have just Jewish, but they have Jewish ancient Israelites in their group. Like, people don't know that, and they keep their Judaism even in there. Like, it's an ancient, like, caravan society, like way more strict than what I would know.
It's an extremely theocratic ideology.
Very theocratic, overly theocratic, too theocratic for theocracy. Theocracy is not supposed to be nomadic in any way. That's like theocracy and tribalism don't really mix at the end.
I mean, when it comes to Afghanistan,
Socialism mixes with theocracy or tribalism, but tribalism, theocracy, that's not compatible. It's bad, and that's kind of my big criticism of the Taliban is they are exactly that. But to be fair to them, their livelihood, their children have been terrorized and stuff like that. They don't hurt their children. Like, a lot of people over.
Like, you're rejecting Turkic and Mongol values.
Huh?
I'm just like, I just really admire Tingrism and the Mongols and Turkic people. I think they're cool.
Oh no, they are. There's a lot to it, and like, people's democracies are very important. What I'm trying to say is, like, there was a manifestation of that in the Chinese Revolution under Mao. And Gaddafi was actually very informed by Mao. By the way, his role model on Arab and Muslim values came from his teacher Nasser. Which is very valued in PSFM, because although this man was not a socialist, he is like the first like pinnacle that is utilized to understand what patriotic anti-imperialism is, because you should love your country, but you have to patriotic socialism, you have to separate it from nationalism. Nationalism is a bad idea.
I'm different than these two, and I think that Jamahiriya, Baathism, Arab socialism, I think all these are socialism. Now, many MLs would disagree with me. They would disagree with me.
Baathism, I don't agree with Baathism. I don't go as far as and I literally mean I'm the only Demarchist that holds this position. I'm the only one that doesn't consider the Baathists to be fascists. But like, they are weird monarchic, like, social democrats, in my opinion. I'm not against social democrats in the third world, because I do think that does go socialist. But the way that Baathists think, I think, is very, and then on top of it, Baathism isn't even the original Baathism anymore. Like, it's really gotten very.
When I say Baathism, I'm talking about not neo-Baathism. I'm talking about the Baathism of Michel Aflaq. Michel Aflaq.
Yeah,
Read
I still
Michel
have
Aflaq.
issues with that. I'll put it this way. I still have issues with that, but I do respect that. Just like I have serious issues with the Muslim Brotherhood, but I respect those people. Those people are not my enemies. They're just people I tend to disagree with.
The Muslim Brotherhood? The people who tried to overthrow Nasser, the people who tried to overthrow all these
they're very dangerous people, and I don't agree with what they do, but like, I honestly have to say, like, people don't know why they exist, like what happened, like what caused that shit to happen.
That's fine if they exist, but what they do is the footwork for imperialism. Therefore, they're our enemies.
Indeed, but they often don't. But they're often not as easily swayed as other proxy groups. Like, they're, for instance, they don't. They're not. Most of them want nothing to do with the conflicts in Syria. They're largely overly hyped up, because as they're dying off, they really are just kind of just going away. Like a lot of people don't know what's happening anymore. Like the whole region has changed, and most of
I
it
don't
is
think people.
completely
I
from the
don't think
West. It's
people understand.
almost all of it is completely from Western intervention, and like the ramifications that it has when you leave.
What about Muhammad? What if you think that they don't have influence in places? How in the hell did someone like Mohammed Morsi become president of Egypt?
Can I say something? I was gonna say something about like when it came to like kind of like Afghanistan. Like me, like if I had to choose a side, I would just choose like the Afghan Maoists, if there are any that are still existing. I just only have like some documents about
Hands off
Maoist
the Taliban. They're cringe, but just leave them alone. Just leave them alone.
They were never good.
Maoism.
They were never. They were
Maoism.
never. They were three worlds theorists. They weren't Maoists. They were followers of the Gang of Four line. They weren't like what you would consider Maoism, like what was happening in the Philippines.
You'll have to give her sources, but she'll look into that.
Of course,
I just like found some documents.
But they're no different than the Maoists in Angola, who after China changed, they just became a Christian Christian right wingers whose leader was a cannibal, but they were the Maoists before, who was supported by all the Maoists, the same leader. The anti-LGBT president who like kills LGBT people legally in Uganda, he was the Maoist. He was the Maoist against the Soviet-backed African Socialist Obote. So I'm just giving you perspective on how Maoism during that age, during the age of the Gang of Four, was not Maoist. It was three worlds theory, I would say. Now, Maoists today are completely different. Like African Maoists today, you can't say that about any. Nobody upholds three worlds theory except for.
I can only find like very few African Maoists. Like I found like a Kenyan Maoist that's like now living in Texas, and I actually they're African Maoists as well. They actually.
I wanted to say something though really quickly. What you said about Mim is not exactly wrong, but there's way more to it than that. That guy who did start off that way, but he got into mass support and he started mass anti-imperialist clubhouses that held weight. Just so you know.
No, I know. I'm just joking around, but my issue is literally with the guy who founded it. That guy is a fucking
he fucked up. There's no question about that. But that's a whole different story.
And that's why I was happy to see. And that's why I specifically advocated for MI in prisons, because they separated from him long before.
No, Mim. It's his fault that Mim kept fracturing. Actually, they continued to keep fracturing. But anyway, different stuff.
What people don't realize about me, I'm revisionist number one. I love Tito and Deng and Xi Jinping.
I get it.
I'm revisionist number one, but oh my god, what we were just talking about? Excuse me.
We all have so much to say. I don't remember where we were actually.
MIM prisons disaffiliated, and I'm revisionist number one. What was I gonna fucking say? I don't even remember. This is what happens when you get a bit older and you do bad things in your youth.
Now you're not going.
Don't ever do drugs. Don't ever smoke. Don't drink. This shit will ruin your body. You need to have a shelf line and a healthy body for the revolution. So
this is the other thing.
Don't make the mistakes that us older comrades have.
This is like the other thing.
We fucked up, honestly. If you think about the older generations of it, we really fucked up. There was a lot of good ideas that came out of the 80s, 80s, and the 90s just degenerated it badly. And then 9/11 happened. And then younger people more in our range of age, we're not left with much. You can see Jason did his best to construct everything. He still has some kinks,
So here's my thing about drugs. In general, on a societal level, they should be decriminalized, and we should give these people help to get them out of that, alienation and sickness that they have. We shouldn't condemn these people. drug users are trying to cope with the alienation and soul crushing effects of
It is
capitalism. No
inhumane to
different.
jail
No
somebody
different than a.
because they're
It's no different than a. It's no different than someone reaching out to a new faith or someone reaching out to another crutch. Now, faith isn't just a crutch, but it can be a crutch. And that's what happens in a lot of these times in these soul crushing situations where people feel so empty and they latch onto something that may not be the best for them, that may even be detrimental for them. But it's giving them a moment of reprieve from this alienating system. So if we're going to help these people, we have to recognize that the reason people become drug addicts isn't because they're broken from the start. It's because this system broke us. It's because we've been attacked by it. And so when someone's on drugs, you don't condemn them for doing that. If they do drugs to cope with their working class life, you don't condemn. If they're bougies, whatever, I don't fucking care. But when it comes to lumpen and working class people or peasants of the third world, that's not what we should be. That's not what we should be condemning. Well, these are people trying to just fucking survive. And, that's what it needs to come down to. But I still implore young people to understand that drugs, especially hard drugs and alcohol and cigarettes, like this shit will kill you slowly. And it will ruin your life.
I had to get a hectare from my rabbi. A hectare is an exemption. It means you've been excused, not where you don't have to follow this commandment. I can't have wine anymore in Jewish rituals. I have to substitute with grape juice because I'm an alcoholic, like bad.
Yeah, it's like that, and some people deal with it in different ways. Whenever I was in my late teens and early 20s, early on in college, I didn't have any money. I was massively in debt. I was working to try to pay this, but I couldn't even afford rent. I was fucked. I felt like everything was lost, right? On top of me not realizing I'm trans and living through gender dysphoria and all this mental illness without any medication or anything. The one thing I had were opioids, right? And I became addicted to those. It was like whenever you did them, you felt so good, but then whenever you get addicted to them, you can't feel right without it. And then you start spending, and this shit's expensive. And it's so expensive to the point that if it gets so expensive that you start to have to buy heroin because it's a cheaper alternative. And then you start injecting that shit because it's the only way to get you. And it gets you on this vicious cycle. And eventually you'll either kill yourself, get clean, or end up in prison. So what you got to do is stay away from that shit. We have enough trouble from the state just for existing and having our views. We can't give them another reason. And for young people who haven't fallen into this yet, I really implore you to fucking just stay away from it. Let me tell you what's a much better high. Going out in the streets with your comrade and standing in solidarity, like protest, serving the people. That's a real high. That makes you feel good. Like you've contributed something, even if it's just a little bit. That's a high that I can't get. That I can't. That's a true euphoria. Serving the people. All power to them.
Right on.
So also I was gonna mention is this, like, I kind of got into like a back and forth with like some of my friends, like about like the Jose factions, like where like basically communists like in the third world doing like using drugs and shit like that.
To clarify that even here, the Jose faction is the militarized Communist Party of Peru, a splinter of the original PCP, and the split, and it split into three factions after Chairman Guzman was arrested. One is Moadef, which is the reformists. Lay down your arms, we submit. We're going to do
basically.
And that's where the connection of Castillo comes from with Moadef. And then you have the militarized Communist Party, which are basically drug runners. They're drug cartels. They have
they also enslave indigenous children as well.
Slave indigenous children, indigenous people in general. So they're not communists. They use that title as just like it's like a badge on top. It's just to scare people.
They also call Gonzalo a traitor or some shit like that.
They call who?
They call him like a traitor. They call Gonzalo a traitor.
What?
Weird.
Yeah. The other thing is with the MPCP as well is literally they call Gonzalo a traitor. What was it? they don't even embrace Gonzalo thought at all. They don't even really even do people's war. All they do is like just like sell basically start shipping and drugs
Yeah,
internationally.
so they get drugged. What they do is they force indigenous peasants to farm and produce coca into
They're
the
feudal
coca
warlords.
into a coca paste. And what they do is they take the coca paste and they take it through the mountains and pass it off to people near the Ecuadorian border, and they take it to Colombia, where it's processed into cocaine and then shipped through Mexico up into the United States. That's how it works, and a lot of it comes from Peru. There's so much, and you know what? You know where the most coca doesn't come from? Where it's legally grown in Bolivia by only indigenous people in Bolivia can grow it because it's a traditional thing for them. And you know, they in the mountains it opens up their lungs, so they're able to breathe on hikes easier. Like it's actually like a useful tool, and it's traditional to them. And you can buy coca leaves everywhere and just chew on them and stuff. But only indigenous people can have it, and or grow it, I should say. Anyone can have it, but only indigenous people can grow it. And Evo Morales is a huge supporter of this, and they're like, "Oh, he's a drug trafficker." Blah,
Long
blah,
live
blah, blah,
Evo Morales!
Along with Evo Morales.
Bolivarianism!
Oh, it's a narco state. It's a narco state.
Uphold Bolivarianism, Maria Nasserism. Sorry.
I agree, honestly. I see them as organic, non-Marxist, organic manifestations of the popular will to move beyond capitalism and imperialism. They're not necessarily based in Marxism. They're certainly organic.
The other thing is this, like I was gonna mention with like the MPCP is that they're just like feudal warlords. They like I think you mentioned this. It's kind of like the warlord era of China or some shit like that. That's happening.
Yeah, we talked about that on our stream, and you know it reminds me so much of the warlord era in China. You know, they each had their little fiefs and kingdoms after the Republic of China sort of became a failed state. And it was all right. And before that, whenever as they ended Qing, they ran the country too, but they sort of came back in power because they never went anywhere. And their main source of income, especially the Xinjiang clique, which was one of the main warlord cliques, one of the biggest ones. You know, the North that allied themselves with the KMT at one point on the Northern Campaign. They made they funded their army through trading opium. That's what they did. You know, the same thing that brought the century of shame to China, the drug that brought an empire to its knees.
Opium.
And they decided this stain, that thing. This is why Chinese people fucking hate drugs. This is why 99% of Chinese people, even though you can get drugs over there just like anywhere else, 99% of them have never seen it, touched it, don't want anything to fucking do with it. Because last time foreigners brought in drugs, it brought them what they call the century of shame. And so this is their attitude towards drugs, and that's why. And this is their attitude towards foreigners, trying to tell them what to do. You know, it's sort of like, we remember last time y'all came and fucked with us. You got the entire country hooked on opium and brought us a century of war and shame. You know, after that, look what happened to Qing Dynasty.
That's why the wall, in a way, is sacred. You know that the wall is sacred if you think about it, because in modern times, it's a relic, but it's a very symbolic of their rights to not be infringed upon, you know, by outsiders.
Every nation's right. Every nation deserves national cultural autonomy and sovereignty. But whenever a nation is tied to land like that, they deserve this sovereignty with everything. Just like
well, the Jewish people, we don't want sovereignty, just the autonomy part for us. You know, we are a diaspora nation, but yeah.
You know, I think autonomy within multi-ethnic, multicultural nations is so essential, so essential. It's so important to what China does. It's the only reason. It's the only reason it's so stable and popular is because of its embracing of the multi-religious, multi-ethnic.
I actually consider China to still be a people's democracy, and that's one of the things I keep trying to explain is this is how people are going to get upset with me, and I will finally take the blame for some of the stuff I do. It's just that it's not always me. There's SMG John, there's the Anglicists, there's the anarchist informants that like tell Jason about like the problems that we're going through and stuff like that. There's a lot of that. But like with me, like I'm going to like I reached an agreement, like, because we have to come up with a cordial language when we disagree about China, because we are going to disagree about China, but we need to fucking like put down our dialectical language for some of these things, and view it through a more cultural lens of how we decide to word this stuff, as definitely America is way worse than anything China or Russia could do. And so what has been you're gonna love this, Elizabeth. You're gonna love this, Elizabeth. It's agreed that we at least concede that China is a Marxist state. So as far as identifying it,
well, I don't think that's deniable. I think that people could maybe, if they wanted to, argue it's not socialist in good faith. They could do that if they had all the information in front of them.
I definitely don't believe it's socialist or even going that direction. But I will say that I do.
Also, you have a different. You're not
it is Marxist. It is definitely Marxist. Like the culture, like the stuff you're showing. There's no way. I'm sorry. That's a Marxist country. In the same way that I would say Vietnam, that's a Marxist country.
I think one thing that a lot of people. Let me give you some perspective here to how much Marxism. How much Marxism means to China and to the just everyday Chinese people. What's amazing is
yourself. You're echoing.
Yeah, Net, you're echoing.
Oh, sorry. Let me go on mute until and like I'm just gonna go. I'm still here, everybody. I'm just on mute.
Yeah, we know.
Wait, where did Falcone go?
I don't know.
You would do that.
I wish I wasn't frozen. Hold on, let me see.
What? No! Oh no! Am I still streaming Connor Gillis' stream? What the hell? Oh no. No. This isn't correct. This is completely incorrect. No! Well. Elizabeth, you better not leave me stranded here. Oh. Okay, good. Okay. Oh, all right.
Guys, Net overthrew El Presidente Connor Gillis.
No, I did No.
Yes, you did. I'm joking. I'm fucking with you.
It's El Presidenta, not El Presidente.
Yes.
Of Christina Fernandez Kirchner correcting this male chauvinist in Argentinian politics. He kept calling her Presidente, and she keeps correcting. She's like Presidenta, ta. It was hilarious. I love that shit. Anyway, I'm not frozen anymore, and I just realized how long we've been streaming. Awesome. Are you drinking horchata? I love this combo, by the way. Horchata's amazing.
No,
I love it. Yeah, amazing horchata here, and we love you. We love you too. We love you too. Okay.
That did a kill.
By the way, second only to Jason, Romero is actually my favorite third world that does online work.
Well,
I just have some criticisms for Romero. Not gonna lie, I have like some things that I would critique Romero on. That's me. That's just my opinion. I think I should just talk to Romero.
I think the difference between Romero and us is that he's someone who's been to these places and been amongst the masses in these places. So I really trust him on that kind of stuff. That's what I trust. I think that's kind of the crux of the situation, is that a part of like when Westerners analyze China,
Um,
Cuba,
I was gonna,
PRK, or even the past. I think one of the biggest
Ness,
uh,
you're
net.
echoing. Ness, you're echoing. Okay, I
Oh,
kind
sorry.
of
Hold on.
out, and we'll let you back in the stream. Just like leave and come back in the stream.
Ned just has his loud fucking speakers on, and a microphone that can hear the speakers, obviously. Um, that's how the echo happens. But what I was gonna say is that in these places, I think that I've been to three of these so-called contentious, we'll call them Marxist states for now with the present company. These Marxist I've been to three Marxist states, right? And I feel like two of them I can't even really speak on this about, but I do have extensive time in one of them. And what I have to say is that it really being amongst in a it's like being on an alien planet when you go to a country that's so removed from the American culture, like regardless of its economic or anything like that. And so you get a whole different view of things. And then you realize, like, when you're talking to workers, holy shit, how do these people know about dialectical materialism when they're street sweepers? How did you learn this?
As well as
like,
the other thing I was gonna say is this:
well,
like, I
let
can
me
even travel there.
let, let me yeah, I do know that you have traveled there. You have a connection to Central America too, which is why you have to listen. um and but what I was going to say is that one thing that happens in Chinese education system that's standard from uh the moment you from elementary school, you start learning about historical materialism. In high school, you start learning the big theory books, like State and Revolution and Lenin and Stalin and Mao. And you learn the basics of dialectical materialism in high school. So every single Chinese citizen who goes through high school, which is everyone now, it's not like how it used to be, it's everyone now, has a basic understanding of dialectical materialism, which is whoa, which is mind blowing to know. Like, wow, that's billions of people who've been taught this. That's, for us, it's like we wish the people of America had the same access to dialectics as they do over there. And then in college, even when you go into college, everyone has to take a Marxist course. And if you're a part of the youth league, you always have to go to Marxist classes and stuff. But this is just like for non-party members, and through education, everyone's educated about socialism, Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, and the big things. You don't really learn about China, the Chinese system, unless you take like specific Chinese classes. But as for socialist history, socialist theory, that comes. Socialist history starts in middle school. The theory starts in high school, and it goes further for basics. And I was just thinking to myself, how fucking awesome would it be my freshman year at university to have like the basics being a class on Lenin, and a class on, that would, oh gosh, that would have been so cool. But one can dream.
Yeah, I was gonna mention this because, like, I was gonna say this, like, I'm even restricted from even traveling, really, because one, I'm too young.
Yeah.
One, I'm not gonna have a passport to even get to these places as well.
Right.
Next,
Right.
I'll
And you
also
haven't
be
had the
banned
time.
from some.
You don't have the means of your own. It's not like it's not
And
like you have a solid job that has paid
and
vacation days.
and also, I would be banned in some countries, so there's that.
I
I
I
bet.
I had to travel uh, to Seoul on a flight whenever I first went to, because when I went to China, I did not go back to America until I like moved back. So like I never went back to the States. So whenever I flew, this was only one time. My layover was in Seoul, and they fucking checked for tattoos. And I have communist tattoos, which are illegal. One of them is Workers' Party of Korea. And if they would have solved that, I would not have been allowed to enter. and go on my flight. So that's scary. Also in Taiwan, you need to be careful about tattoos and stuff, and what you wear, because they have a fascist government, fascist as fuck.
I'd like to say something. Wait. I'd like to say something in regard to that. This is exactly why, Elizabeth, it's important that you talk to me about these things. I'm not these exact things you're saying, but like I thought that things were more around like, because I understand traveling, going to Russia. A lot of times, if they know you're from America at all, even if you weren't really born there, if you're even a citizen, they want to know if you're a CIA. You could be detained because like they're very suspicious of certain things, like
That's not
customs
what
and travel is so.
That's
Like,
not what it's like in China. In China, they are not suspicious of foreigners. They are very welcoming of foreigners.
no,
Very
but you're
warm.
talking about places where you couldn't, like, the way you got to, location, illegal tattoos and stuff. Like,
Oh, that was in South Korea,
no,
and
but that's the thing with travel, though. That's the thing is that, like the way you mentioned like curriculum, for instance, the detail, which is what I was hoping you would mention. That's what I'm trying to like explain to other people. Like, look, yeah, I completely agree on the economic side of what you're saying for on the concept of socialism, but these people are very Marxian in their thinking. I can promise you that.
yeah.
I think a lot of people do not understand what happened when the capitalist gate swung during the Cold War, the way it did it.
Literally, your local IE who's playing hacky sack. Old Chinese people love playing hacky sack. Your local IE playing hacky sack knows more about dialectics than most Western communists. And she's no party member. She's an IE. Maybe a street sweeper, maybe a stall vendor, maybe a custodian, like that. These people aren't like party members. They don't study it. They don't have like required meetings to study it. Like
that's also why if there was ever gonna be like a Chinese revolution against the state, it would happen regardless of whether we wanted it to happen or not. That like honestly, the West is like. I know a lot about Russia, but to be fair, other people in the West know about Russia. We're more connected to Russia, and this is one of the things I've tried to explain about the pan-European thing. It involves self-correction.
Like how incredibly popular the Chinese government is. And this is an anecdote. Of course,
but if you notice, I mean, what leftists, like even sincere anti-colonial leftists in the West, do not understand Asia at all. I've seen this, like typically.
Yeah, it's literally like being on a different planet. For like when I first got there, it almost gave me vertigo and how different everything was. It was like so much. It was everything all at once, almost like I'm autistic, like information overload. It was so much at once, and I really didn't get it. It took me years to even feel comfortable there. And when I started feeling like myself there, I felt, and people started, like whenever I lived in these communities, I didn't go into like what they call the wide wall sectors, the foreigner sectors, where they build apartments that foreigners want, that are ridiculously priced, but no different than any other apartments.
This is straight up people's democracy, like life you're talking about, because I know about this, about studying Jaha Maria and like the people's spirit is still in China. It may not be as they would want it to be, but it's not gone. Like the people's like revolution is still in the people over there. Which is what we know about too.
You know the famous song that Jason always used to put at the end of his videos. I actually think he still does. Sailing the seas depends on the helmsman.
Sailing the seas depends on the helmsman.
Guys, we got it.
In Sun Yat-sen's hometown, I was with there's like these old men smoking out of this like bamboo water pipe, which is like tobacco. At the time I smoked. And it's like a bottomless bong in a water bucket, basically, but for tobacco. It's a traditional Chinese thing. It's bamboo, and they let me smoke it with them, and we sat there and sang like "Sailing the Seas," depends on the helmsman, and all these other revolutionary songs with these old Chinese men. and it was just one of the most fun things ever.
Guys,
And then like
That is
then like
amazing.
younger people
Guys.
started coming over and taking pictures of us.
Wow.
And it was really fun.
That's
It
incredible.
was really, yeah. No, these
Guys,
people fucking they love it.
guys, we got to uphold Jason Unruh thought. Fish don't leave the water, nor melons
Please
leave
design
fine.
resolution.
Now they don't thought it is the sun and blah blah blah.
Oh,
And
I'm not
part of
that way.
the part,
This is mushy.
a
No,
part of
I'm sorry.
Jason thought, guys,
It's
and a
so
principle of
bad. The
Jason Unruh
illustration
thought
so
is
bad.
to have. Guys, I have to say this. A principle of Jason Unruh thought is this: to have crippling depression, and then basically get a sword, and when a zombie invasion happens, and just slice it through your neck. There. And also,
Yeah.
fish don't leave the water. That's also a principle of Jason Unruh thought.
I've been trying to explain to Jason that kids were growing up, or they find him and they find him inspiring. Like he's like you don't understand, man. Like you make them feel safer and stuff.
I have to say that the English version of that song sucks.
Fish don't leave the water, nor melons leave the vine. Now they don't thought it is the sun.
So silly. It sounds
Jason's
so
the one
silly.
guy that
It
made it
makes a lot
sound
more sense in
cool.
Chinese. It
Can
makes a lot more
somebody
sense in Chinese.
link the video? Can somebody link me the video of Jason Unruh singing that?
No. Let's not do that. Let's not.
Please, I want it.
No. Like he did that as fan service. Somebody else did that.
Fish don't
No.
leave the vine. Now they don't thought it was the sun.
What's funny about that? There's a cult like there's actually a culture around that. With in a way like Jason actually was a contributor. We watered down contributions of certain people who are online who are not just internet people.
And
So I'm going to teach y'all a little bit of Chinese. Mao Zedong Su Jia. That's Mao Zedong thought. And then you have Mao Su Qi, which means Chairman Mao. And then you have Mao Yeah, which is Grandpa Mao, which is what little kids call him, and it's adorable. Mao Yeah. like I'll say 你们知道毛泽东同志? They're like, Mao Zedong, 我不知道. And I don't know who the hell that is. And I say Mao Yeah. Oh, Mao Yeah, 我知道. It's so cute. And I'm talking about like kindergarten.
The only thing I can understand, the only thing that I know in Mandarin is this word ni hao. That's the only shit that I understand from in Mandarin, and I can't I need to learn more.
Ni means you, and hao means good. You good? That's hello. Ni hao. But how can mean a lot of different things in different contexts. Not just like if you say how kawaii, when kawaii is a loan word from Japanese that means cute. Yeah, they have loan words just like everyone else. How kawaii.
I suggest, by the way, that everybody subscribe to Telesaur. Just if you love RT or Al series, watch Telesaur. Yeah, I love Telesaur.
Live from Havana. It's Telesaur
from
English.
I stopped watching. I stopped watching Telesaur and I just started watching more Jason Unruh and then just watching Franco more.
There's nothing. There's really nothing out there that can replace From the South. They're 30 minutes.
Oh, I love that program. I would watch that in RT last year in 2020. Right up to the months before,
I know a couple of
back to back. I was watching RT streams and From the South streams on Telesaur.
From the South is the only media company, private or backed by the state or independent, or no, I should say private or backed by the state with this amount of resources that platforms.
I
support them.
And then as well as the other thing I also started doing is I started watching more stuff from little journalists as well, from this one show that used to be a part of the network that I work for, the Hair and the Dog Show, which now they only have 60 subs now, ever since they now have to go like
Good?
independently because there was a split that
good?
happened. But I'm not.
Is
Yeah,
it
that's
good?
good.
Unfortunately,
Well,
him
I've got
gonna have
They
Carson Chan and the
interviewed.
Hare and the Dog. If you want to get some
They
cool independent news from a left wing perspective, I suppose, right?
yeah. They
So
interviewed
go check them out. Subscribe.
they interviewed a member of the New African Black Panther Party and the Young Lords and the White
Cool.
Panther Party.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So
As well as like Vanessa Beatley as well.
Hey,
You know,
hey,
when-
I gotta say something. I actually kind of have to exit soon, and I'm not like trying to leave like everybody here, but like I might have to exit soon.
All right.
That's fine. Hey,
All
that's
right,
fine.
Fine.
I have to.
But,
I'm
but I,
eventually going to have to
I
go
appreciate
there.
being on here, and I appreciate the like this is like something that isn't necessary, is the humanizing of the third world and even just other countries. Like I can remember like when I like now it's okay to like Russian people in our sector of the world, like on our social space, but I can remember when that was even taboo. You know, so we
Oh
you know,
yeah. After this, I'm going to do my founding fathers video and then do a live stream where I'm just gonna
So
say
yeah,
Alright.
man. I was actually
Maslava.
talking with Tony about that.
By the way, Rich Salute. I gotta go now. Bye.
I'm not
Bye.
going to say much about the founding fathers of the American Revolution, but I do want y'all to watch out for what Falcone, because me and Falcone were talking about this in Discord earlier a little bit about our beef with the founding fathers, because we got beef.
Thomas Jefferson raped children, guys.
Say that again.
That's what Thomas Jefferson raped black girls, little kids.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He had illegitimate children that way. You know, there's probably a large amount of black people in America that are descendants of Thomas Jefferson's rape, which is disgusting and horrific. And that's sort of just a microcosm of the larger Atlantic slave trade and what it had and how it created the black nation in America and how it's a.
Can I also say something? I wouldn't be surprised if the Atlantic slave trade became like the first like in historical existence or historical example of sex trafficking as well. Because
no, sex trafficking has always existed. You know, especially in the slave society. Well, not really, not maybe not in primitive communism, but once the people started accumulating production and building cities, and slave societies came. You know, slave society. You know that half of those slaves were women, and even men and boys and girls. You know, they were all sex trafficked, and you know it was something of the elite. But there was nothing really that had ever happened on the global scale, the mass removal of people and putting them in a new place. Most of them slaves, of whom were sex trafficked. Nothing had. That was the first example of it to happen under capitalism, which is not supposed to happen under capitalism. That is a terrible reactionary regression. You know, it's against the quote unquote liberal values, and yet it pervaded, and it's disgusting. It really is.
It's like so fucking crazy. And also, I hate this like bullshit. As well as I was gonna make another one. My most famous series that everyone knows me for and also hates me for. They Are Not Your Friend. Where I also was gonna make a video on Right Wing Watch, and basically he said Lenin.
They're horrible.
He said Lenin was a right winger who said communism was some infantile disorder. Basically, just misquotation.
He wrote a book called "Left Communism is an Infantile Disorder." Not communism is an infantile disorder. You fucking idiot. You know what left communism is? You're the left communist. That's you.
Oh, he's not even a left communist at all, really. He's not even a left com. He's just a social fascist, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear he tries to ruin the lives of communists, and anyone who tries to do that is a piece of shit.
He also
Yes,
did it. He's also like he did that on Dark Zenobia's comment about literally how like there's such a cult of personality over literally these like founding fathers, which were just like bunch of fucking rich white people that I wish
bunch
indigenous
of
people
slave
mutilated.
there were literally in the picture of the Declaration of Independence, you know, the famous photo that has everyone standing majestically as it's signed. Only one person in that photo wasn't a slave owner. Only one. It happens to be James Madison, who became president, but he was not. He wasn't a good person either. So don't get your hopes up. But every single person
Yeah.
who signed the Declaration of Independence, but one, was a slave owner. And then you'll hear apologists say, well, they're products of their time. Actually, no, slavery was a deep reactionary view during the capitalist liberal age. During this new liberal age, right? This was during the same time as the French Revolution, right? And the French Revolution, they absolutely abolished slavery. You know, like that was one of the primary things for them, is to abolish slavery and give full male suffrage. You know, it was liberalism, not socialism, but that's what it was about. And the American, and this is what they were trying to reform their way into in Britain. And they established the constitutional monarchy, which was much more progressive than the absolutism that came before it. It was a new stage of production where the bourgeoisie had a say instead of just the nobility. And the United States, well, these people, or these colonizers, well, this was a whole new thing, because these people were slave owners. They left these places because laws were starting to come up about slaves, where they couldn't do what they were doing. And they went to America not to be free of religion, but to be free to steal land, to be free to have slaves, to be free to do this. And
Yeah.
whenever the British government started taking a closer interest in its colony and started imposing its more progressive liberal laws onto the colonies, they said no. Well, their cry was no taxation without representation. That's what they said. How they riled up the people, because most people weren't slaves; they were just normal people, um, settlers, but normal people. You know, not anyone
Yeah.
conscious enough to realize to know what they were doing. You know, many of them were born
Yeah.
there in the colonies at the time, and
Yeah.
but
The other
what they were fighting for was land and slaves. That was it. And well, I'll let you explain to them in the next video, but I had to do something with the British government coming and saying, well, you can't do this anymore. You have to stop.
As well as the other thing is this, like, it also had to do with the 7 Years' War as well, which I would consider as an
Absolutely.
actual First
They're,
World War,
yeah,
where
that's true. That is
basically,
true. The actual First World War. That's a fact.
where after the 7 Years' War was literally due to like them having to like where it's also called the French Indian War, but it's not really a French Indian War, but
Well, that was the North
but
that's what the Americans called it. It's
uh,
known like academically and in the rest of the world as the 7 Years War.
where literally like they spent so much money defending these like 13 settlements, or what I would call the settlements or something like that, or 13 colonies. Basically
Yeah.
spent so much money that got them in debt after they like won the whole war, the 7 Years' War. And
Mm-hmm.
literally they were having to tell the Americans, who they literally had to defend their colony, to go like, hey, we spent all our money protecting you. Can you give can you pay these taxes so we can pay off our debt and so we wouldn't have to
Yeah.
be bankrupt?
Yeah, because what
But
people
they
don't
were like,
realize
no.
that the colonies were very autonomous. They had their Lord Governor Generals and stuff that were subject to the king and the parliament, but they didn't pay any taxes at all to the crown before that. But because like uh, like this was like the 1750s when the 7 Years War happened. So about 20 years before the American Revolution, and many of the American Revolutionary generals fought, like George Washington, for example, fought for the British in that war because they were part of the British aristocracy, just living in the United States. And most of the regular, colonialists and indigenous people, that were trying to coexist, though it wasn't copacetic, as we know settler colonialism is horrible. They were forced to choose sides by the French Empire and the British Empire, right? So you had indigenous and First Nations people from all over fighting for the French or fighting for the British, and it was and people don't realize that there was actually a war going on in Europe at this time, mainland war. There was conflicts going on, colonial conflicts also going on in India between the British and the French, and in South Africa.
Yeah.
Like, this was the First World War, and it was truly just and this was like settler colonialism of the new capitalist age. And it was a whole new manifestation, along with the Atlantic slave trade, which was such a distortion, like reaction of capitalism. Like, it's reactionary, and there was nothing. They were not men of their times. They were reactionary. like the men of their times were people like Robespierre overthrowing the monarchy, making fucking slavery illegal, and giving full voting rights to common working class men. Those were the people fighting revolutions, not fucking. I call it the American Rebellion.
I don't even call it a rebellion or anything of that sort, or like a revolution at all, because like really, I just see it as basically just like a bunch of rich white people who just didn't want to fucking pay taxes and lately wanted to keep slaves and shit like that.
And keep expanding land past the Appalachians, which was forbidden by the British government. Like,
yeah, and also I live in the Appalachia region as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a whole history behind it, because the Appalachians at that time were filled with a bunch of indigenous people who did not, like Mohicans, Cree. These people did not fucking like this. They weren't like they weren't like the ones who had been exposed to them for a couple hundreds of years on the East Coast and were pushed out and all killed. And the other ones were assimilated or just like laying their heads low. These people fucking hated the white man. Like, hated him.
We wanted to mutilate them and just want them fucking out. That's what some of us wanted at the time.
Go home. Yankee, go home.
Why do you go home?
There were some people that conceded to them, but you can't blame those indigenous people for not understanding what these people were going to do. They saw other humans in good faith. Unfortunately, they didn't know the nefarious nature of these colonizers, and it sucks. And they were taking advantage of. Because I guarantee you, if they warned them about what was going to happen, that there would be no USA. And this would still be indigenous land. If they would have been warned, no way they would have fucking white guys come up. Like, people say, like, oh, in Peru they overthrew it with just 100 guys versus 2,000. Y'all don't understand that they tricked the king into like coming to this place, and none of his men were armed. And they tricked him, and they captured him because he thought it was a good faith meeting in traditional like style warfare. He didn't understand this fucking evil. That's what it was. It was evil. He didn't understand it. They expect a lot of them. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of these that were tricked, they expected the best from fellow humans, and why not? Right? But unfortunately, they couldn't know. They didn't have fucking Falcone warning them on YouTube back then. Unfortunately, so
yeah. The other thing, it's like so crazy of all this shit that happened, like as well as like what happened to like Montezuma, which was basically our king at the time. where like how they basically just like went into Tenochtitlan and basically destroyed the whole fucking place.
Yeah,
Like,
I actually watched a video on how this happened. They had because what people don't realize is that most of the foot soldiers for the Spanish weren't those few Spanish people on horseback. I mean, there was only like 50 of them on horseback, and that most of their people came from the enemies of the of the of the Aztecs, right? Um,
yeah,
and so
basically some of
and
the
that
city
area
states
conquered
rebelled.
people because what people don't realize is that Aztec society was very advanced. It was an empire. It was in an empire stage, and they had brought other people under their purview, centered around this sacred city that was a land deemed cursed, a swamp deemed cursed that they built their land on, and they succeeded. But then these nefarious colonizers came in and whispered sweet nothings into the ears of their enemies. A whole bunch of promises were broken, obviously, because they got genocided too, and assimilated too. And so, it's just like people think it's because they're superior knowledge and military tactics and technology. No, it's because they were fucking scheming little shits who used people against each other. And it was by no merit of their own skill or anything like that. It's just a typical imperialist tactic that manifests itself in modern imperialism, like funding one side to fight against the other of local people in the country, like say there's in China, the Chiang Kai-shek was funded by the West and Mao was not. And Chinese people were fighting Chinese people over justice. And that's what happens. That's what imperialists do. It's as old as time.
It also kind of reminds me a little bit about this, like after the First World War and basically after like the Treaty of Versailles, like like in China, this is what happened. Like they couldn't even get like back like this like one part, like these like parts of the
Shandong
peninsula.
province. Shandong
Yeah.
province. I actually made a video about May the 4th movement. You should check it out. It's really short. Called the May the 4th movement, which was the first anti-imperialist movement in China, and it was based off of that. So it's really
Where
cool.
basically
And
it
goes
didn't go
right
back
to
to
the
China. Like it didn't go back to Chinese control because it was on their territory. It went like to the Japanese instead.
From the German to the Japanese. From the German
And kind
Empire
of
to
a
the
funny
Japanese.
story. Back,
Yeah,
I think it was
crazy.
like one of the Japanese prime ministers was talking to Mao at the time and said like I apologize for like what we did to you guys and shit like that. And then he was like caught on like camera for it, and whoa,
That's a
he
big
like
deal for a Chinese prime minister to admit that. That's a huge deal. Because now today,
like
like the ruling LDP party, like these people, they deny it, and they want to rebuild Japan's military, which is illegal in international law for Japan to have a military.
yeah, it's like holy fuck. He apologized for the shit that they did in like the Nanking massacre and
Wow.
shit like that. And then
I just wanna just for a little Chinese lesson. That's the Wei Giles version. The proper version is Nanjing, Nanjing, like with a J. Nanjing.
oh,
And
Nanjing.
the same with Beijing, they used to call it Peking because Wei Giles is fucking stupid, but Peking is really Beijing. Yeah, so that's just Anglos trying to transliterate Chinese and failing, and then a Chinese guy who actually recently died a couple years ago actually invented a proper transliteration called pinyin into Latin, which is where Mao Zedong comes from instead of Mao Zedong. It's Mao Zedong, which is the proper one. That's actually Chinese transliterating it for us, saying if you learn the phonetics of pinyin, you can learn how to pronounce Chinese. Here's how you do it. Saying, you fucking idiots, you did it wrong.
Yeah,
I love it.
and also like it's kind of funny as well as like I kind of remember this other thing where this like guy who called themselves like post Nosball Juche was telling Danky King that China is ethnically homogenous and shit like that, and
Oh
then
no!
literally, oh my god, that turned out to be that turned out to be such bullshit because literally
Oh yeah,
7% of their population is made up of ethnic minorities like the
yeah.
Tibetans as well as
Tibetans,
Malfree Tibet
Mongolians,
guys.
Mo, Ho people. In Guangxi,
Cantonese,
you
I
have
think,
the Xinjiang people, the Uyghurs. You have Hui
as
people. You
well
have
as the
Hakka
Cantonese,
people.
I think. There's also the
Who?
Cantonese that
Oh, Cantonese are a
basically
different
the
ethnicity. They're a type of Han people. Hanzhou are, and Manchurians are not. Manchurians are from the Northeast are not Hanzhou. So you have like Mongols, the
oh
indigenous
yeah,
people of
because like
Taiwan, the
because
indigenous
you
people
also
of
have like
Taiwan,
like
Tibetan.
Outer Mongolian as well, Outer Mongolia and Inner Mongolia as well. There,
Yeah,
look,
well, Inner Mongolia, Outer Mongolia is just Mongolia, the country, and Inner Mongolia has more Mongols than Mongolia.
yeah, it's so funny. And
and
also,
they
I
and they
remember
use
Mongolia used to be a
and
part of China.
they actually use Mongol script, while in Mongolia they use Cyrillic. One thing China is
Wow.
very careful about is preserving local languages, like like Uyghur. Like if you look on any piece of Chinese money, you'll see in each of the scripts of China, each of the writing scripts, you have like the Mongol script, the Uyghur script, the of course the traditional Chinese, and you have all these other ones, and and they're protected languages. Like so China has this thing where it has special protected status of certain languages, ethnicities, and religions uh, that they consider to make up the Chinese nation. They consider all of this to be Chinese, right? So Hui people are Hanzhou Muslims, like they're Han Muslims, and they're the largest Muslim group in China. I mean, of course, Westerners don't talk about them because fuck them. But they
Westerners,
pray in
my
the
right
same mosques.
guys.
They pray in the same mosques as Uyghurs, and they actually have more mosques. Um, and then you have Uyghurs and all these people. They consider themselves like if you go to Xinjiang and you ask a Uyghur, um, "Are you Chinese?" They'll say, "Yeah," and they'll say, "Well, are you Xinjiang Ren?" Which means a Xinjiang person. They'll be like, "Yeah, I'm that too, but I'm also Chinese." They
As
consider
well as
China. They're
like,
proud of their hometowns, but they're also proud to be Chinese. Like it's a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society, and the five religions that are protected that make up Chinese society are Taoism,
as well as
Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. These are the five religions they say make up the Chinese religious character. And even though most Chinese people are irreligious, they're not religious at all. So it's interesting.
as well as I was gonna mention is this, like, for example, if you go look into old Tibetan society, like, geez, you would see it's like, holy fuck, how like horrible it was before Mao liberated Tibet.
Yeah, the Dalai
Guys,
family had the family that the Dalai Lama came from had 6,000 slaves, 6,000 of their own personal
and,
slaves.
hey, and guys, we must all learn this. Mao liberated Tibet. Mao liberated Tibet.
Yep.
Repeat after me in the chat, guys. Mao
Mao
liberated Tibet.
liberated Tibet. Deng Xiaoping liberated Hong Kong. and and Jiang Zemin liberated Macau. Oh, they're gonna hate me. They're gonna hate me. But honestly, there's only one China. Fuck all that colonization shit.
Oh my god, you should
I just
also I also
figured.
learned this history when it came to Taiwan where like they did this in Taiwan where they basically got rid of the indigenous Polynesian people there.
Yeah. The indigenous Polynesian people are actually a part of the preservation China wants to do, but unfortunately, because of Western meddling, they don't have access to protect them. And so, yeah, they've basically genocided those people. Most of the Chinese people um, um, that were on Taiwan before live peacefully. They lived peacefully with the indigenous Taiwanese people. It wasn't until the Japanese came and started fucking trouble that everyone started getting fucked up. And then, well, what people need to realize is the majority of people who fled to Taiwan and the government, KMT government, were from Foshan province, because that's where Chiang Kai-shek and his clique was from. It's near, not it's right by it's where Nanjing is, and it's on the coast. Most of them come from there, and it's very close to Taiwan. So these Foshan, these Foshan men of the KMT, the right wing KMT,
Is it too controversial for me to say this, that Chiang Kai-shek deserved the bullet?
No, not at all. He's horrible. He betrayed the KMT. Because what people don't understand is that the KMT had the full support of Mao and the Chinese Communist Party during the time of Sun Zhongshan, or Sun Yat-sen, as known in Cantonese. And that's a chosen name, by the way. Sun or Zhongshan. That's not his birth name. Zhongshan means middle mountain. It's like a symbol of like a steady, strong center, like of a leader. You know, and Chiang Kai-shek did the same thing, except he called himself Steel Mountain. Prick. Anyway, so what he did was he purged the left wing of the KMT. Most of them ended up in the Communist Party, and the Communist Party, of course, cut their support, and they still held Sun Yat-sen. Like if you go to Beijing, Sun Yat-sen's portrait is across from Mao's in Tiananmen Square. They call Sun Yat-sen the father of the republic because he founded the republic. So and I went to his mausoleum in Guangzhou and his hometown, but the mausoleum is beautiful, a beautiful revolutionary history of overthrowing the Qing dynasty. In Guangzhou, you can find a lot of cool stuff, but you'll love this stuff. So they have something in Guangzhou called the Peasants Revolutionary Training Center, which was a small clandestine group led by Mao Zedong in Guangzhou in the 1920s. Like this was early days, and he was training peasants about communism. And they have the barracks still there, and like all the rifles on the wall and everything. And then you go, and then they have Mao's room set up just as it was with the bed he used and everything, just roped up.
That is so awesome.
And then that's where he slept. And then you go into the back, and they have his desk lamp, his favorite pillow back in there. And this is just at a small little peasant barracks in the middle of Guangzhou. And now it's a museum. And it was a place where he trained people. And it's so awesome. And what Guangzhou has a lot. If you watch my old video about the Jiangxi Soviets, which is later on, and the Guangzhou uprising in 1927, that was the first uprising of communists in China that sort of gave popularity to the communists amongst the Chinese people. Was the Guangzhou uprising and the martyrs? They all were murdered. But if you go there, they each have the figures each have a statue of and just explaining who they are. And they have and this is called Martyr Square, and they have a giant pillow to the martyrs of the 1927 Guangzhou uprising. Guangzhou is a very special revolutionary city that I think a lot of people should go to. And Foshan's right next to it. You can look at all the kung fu stuff there, which is dope too.
As well as I learned this. The other thing is this: like, have you ever heard about the People's Commune in Shanghai or something like that? Or no?
The gang of four who were literary critics of Shanghai overthrew the Chinese government there and kickstarted the Cultural Revolution. It was actually not a very good thing.
When I was hearing you guys, sorry, gals, I heard you both talking about all this really interesting stuff about China and how you were both like slamming like really bad Western ideas about it being a homogenous state and everything. I was I had to come back on. I had to come back on.
Yeah, and this is something that Westerners fetishize all Asian countries, either fetishize or demonize them for one or the other. When you have like white nationalists say, "Oh, look at how perfect Japan is," it's because it's a homogenous society, and then you have people saying it's terrible because it's a homogenous society. Maybe Japan, I don't know, but when you look at China,
Oh, I remember neo-Nazis praised the DPRK for being a quote-unquote homogenous society. Or some
That's
base
hilarious.
ethno-state. Oh my god. Help me.
I mean,
Help.
if anyone has ever talked to anyone from the DPRK or read anything from anyone, you'll first and foremost understand they are internationalists. They are against colonialism and racism. They have supported national liberation struggles across the world. They're not a fucking ethnos.
Yeah,
Weirdos. Like they supported
the
Black
very idea
Panther
to them
Party.
would be absurd. But I wanted to actually point out something about Iran, if it was okay, because like, you know,
Yeah.
so like I sometimes feel like I shouldn't have to explain it to people, but I notice like people don't like it when I typically, you know, oppose communist movements in Iran because I number one, to anybody who understands that work, they're not backed by the masses, and it's largely because it's seen Western. They perceive it as Western, regardless of what part
I
of the
don't
world
support
it's from.
any party. I don't support the Communist Party of Iran, Tudeh party. I don't support them. I support the Iranian government against imperialism. They can solve the question of socialism after
Yes.
imperialism is done breathing down their necks.
Yes, because the Ayatollah Khomeini actually delivered every promise he made to to every marginalized group. Even the Baha'i, funny enough, because that would be technically illegal. There was a loophole that they did for the Baha'i. I'll talk about that in a second.
My friend from Tehran fell in love with the Baha'i girl. It's one of the most tragic stories you'll ever hear.
But let me get into this. Noahide, wouldn't you agree? Totally. Like the Baha'i. Completely Noahide, if you think about it. Yeah, so like...
Totally.
So Iran... now, a lot of people would say probably Mossadegh was better. Maybe from the point of view of a socialist or even a social democrat, maybe that's true. Except that the Shah was a fascist. It's not classical fascism. I wouldn't call him that, but he was a fascist, and he took the country.
Yeah, I would say so. He was a saving grace for capitalism after
brutal.
Yeah.
And it was a total dump on the predominant Shiite culture, which had an interconnected system to the other religious and ethnic groups in the country. And the Shah was a total piss on that. He was an assimilationist. He was everything that they hated about the West. And when the Ayatollah Khomeini came...
I have a friend from Tehran. He is not a socialist or communist. He's a proud Shia. But he fell in love with the Baha'i girl. He fell in love with the Baha'i girl, and how he's telling me, I don't know, I'm about to make my family all disappointed, but I really like this girl. And I'm like, oh, how it is to be young in Tehran.
Yeah. That is Tehran. That is Tehran. Oh, Tehran's best at night, by the way, just so you know. There's not.
I have
another
Iraqi friend.
I just want to do one more anecdote. Someone who trained me for TPR in China, Total Physical Response, English training school in Zhuhai. He was born in Iran. He's Baha'i, and he left as a child and lived in Gujarat his whole life, Gujarat, India. And then he married a Chinese woman and started, teaching English. And he was a really cool guy, and he taught me a lot about Baha'i faith, which is really interesting. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. It's really cool.
But I want to tell you more about like big misconceptions here. So like, there's this conception that the women are super repressed and all this other stuff. That's not really true. I mean, there are definitely some grievances that the women make, but ironically, you hear about these grievances on Iranian news like all the time. And
Well, yeah,
they have
because
even
people don't
mullahs
realize
they
that.
even have mullah sympathizers that say, you know what, man, we do gotta let the women like have a way more grace on this. Like this is actual stuff going on, and that's their own. Another thing people don't want to hear is like now I wouldn't call that exactly a people's democracy, but it is
It's an
definitely
Islamic
a people's
republic.
movement. It is definitely a people's like republic. It is definitely
I was
It's an
gonna,
Islamic republic for
Yeah.
I was gonna
sure.
say this. Can I say this? Like, I have some like Iraqi friends, like Hakeem, where they're like, we don't like Iran because like some of their like stuff is
Okay,
like,
I can explain that. Like, I want to weigh in on that because I think that a lot of people are misunderstanding a lot of that.
I didn't get to finish my point. Sorry,
Okay,
Nat.
all right.
But like,
Yeah, sure,
uh,
you're
where they're saying like putting Iraqi businesses like out of business and basically like it's now just like Iranian imports, basically just like the like Iranian stuff, goods and stuff like dominating every industry in Iraq now.
there's a lot I could say about that, and I'm not saying he was wrong, but like there's more to it than like I don't like it when that's informed upon on the West. Honestly, like I respect Hakeem, but I also let's just put it this way, like I understand Iran's stances and why Iran does what it does. This is why, as much as China's adventures into Africa make me suspicious of it, I have to admit that, you know what, given the situation of Iran, I'm not sure what China's situation with this is. I would need several sources on at least 4 different sides of that debate that are actually real sources. And because it bothers me that we know the pros and cons, for instance, of Russia. We know that they suffer under imperialism and that they have their own semi-imperialistic tendencies, basically. But we know that from a Western point of view because even though Russia's not Western, it's more connected largely to the culture of resistance in America, which is also in like Anglo America, like Britain, Canada, and the United States, and like there's an information that's fed into the left in the West, and I don't think people understand that is that way. Especially because I'll be honest, I was a Russian propagator. I'm not a simper. It's just that I am more for. I really don't trust basically what we should call globalism. It's just that like globalism is a word which technically comes from globalization, but the word globalism is dialectical, and I'm really like one of the main people like with as well aside from John and Newman that really pushed the idea that the dialectic had to have been hijacked. There's no way it was not hijacked. And other Demarcus theorists had thought about that too. That the way you look at the CIA, it's like they're the ones that are the dialectics masters at this point because imperialism has changed completely. So like, I'm always very wary of people saying anything bad about, like for instance, China, because I've been that way with Russia, and I've thought about this a lot. And like we don't know enough. And in the same way where we had that resistance movement to learn about Russia, we should have the same for China, because it's only a fraction of European Americans that really understand anything about China. And Iran, mostly nobody understands at all, I've noticed. And I actually been there 4 times. And it's like the women, for instance, like they have debates in parliament about the hijab, believe it or not. That's up to them to talk about them. That like, well, people weigh in on things like that is very upsetting to me. Because the whole point of the hijab was to defy the West. But anyway, that's sorry.
Yeah, if you ask the majority of
Um,
Muslims who wear coverings, like if they're down with it, if they, how they feel about it, they are usually very impassioned about, about their modesty and about their religious principles, and I admire that a lot.
Yeah.
can I say something? I was gonna say this, like my phone's dying and I gotta go soon, and also I don't want my phone
Yeah,
overheating.
I'll have
But
to go as well. I think
yeah,
this will be a good point to stop. I mean, we've been this has been a long stream, but
yeah.
I very much enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming on, you two, and solidarity, everyone. Yeah.